the people of Kenya. But Kithure Kindiki said, I urge this court to find the BBI process a botched attempt to overthrow the people and their constitution. Luckily, by the grace of the Almighty God, the judiciary through the Superior Court rightly interpreted the constitution and declared the process null and void. Elias Mutama, when the president was going to The Hague in 2014, he stripped himself of power and appointed his deputy as the acting president. He was not received at The Hague as the president. He was received as a normal citizen. He should do the same if he wants to initiate popular initiative. Esther Ngawa, how would IEBC know that the signatures were for the people who signed the BBI document? The reasons given by the commission that they could not verify the signatures is not sufficient. Dr. Mudhomi Ithiankolu, when Kenyans are watching, what Kenyans are watching is whether the Court of Appeal will drop its sword. If you, judges, drop your swords by allowing the appeals, then we will go back to the old days of constitutional violations. Why? Many things were said yesterday, and this is just a snapshot of about 7 of them. President Kenyatta's involvement in BBI under sharp focus as the Court of Appeal, as several parties fault him for using state resources to support the process. He should not be using his position as president to pursue and encourage this initiative. We've heard that if he wanted to pursue something such as popular initiative, then he needed to step down from his position as president and then do so. But right now in his position, according to these arguments put forth by quite a number, he should not be able to do that in his position. And he has violated this position by doing this.
So the highlight here is like the lawyers were focusing on Uhuru's participation in the process.
Yes.
Everything else is not yet there yet.
No, we've not gotten to that argument yet. This is what we're focusing on right now.
Even though there's also the issues of the procedural around the verification of signatures and the IBC violating its own regulations on that. There is also, some of the substantive issues about the presidential, parliamentary, the hybrid system that we've had. I think which goes to the heart of the way amendments were done to the Constitution since independence, which was one of the key issues that the ruling addressed, that this hyper amendments, culture of just amending, until you're left with a constitution that, yes, it's there in law, but it doesn't mean it's incoherent with itself. So when you start talking about this, you're really saying, what's the basic doctrine? What kind of system did we, 74% of Kenyans agree to be governed under? And then, of course, the issue of public participation that we were talking about yesterday. And like we said yesterday, we're talking, I think our political leaders are having a problem with the High Court ruling that said the direct constituent power of the citizen supersedes that of the representative power. Because essentially, that is what the ruling said. They said that, and it's trying to remind our politicians, they derive their power from the citizens. And so that the popular petition is reserved for citizens. And our politicians are having, if I were to now interpret it in lay terms, and what the court said is that the popular petition is the preserve of the citizen, not of a head of state, not of a state officer, not of a representative of the people.
It is a citizen exercising their sovereignty directly. Because this is the 3 ways the citizens exercise their sovereignty. 1, through directly. 2, through commissions that have been established in the Constitution. 3, through their elected representatives. So this is basically saying that we start an initiative with citizens expressly expressing their views on something.
Hands off. You have your tools of power. This is a tool of power for Wanjiku.
For Wanjiku. Only.
You can't have your tools of power and then you come and ingilia Wanjiku's tool of power. Where is the check? It means Wanjiku actually has a tool to check. So this constitution created checks and balances because of the historical abuses of power.
But what the LSK president is saying looks something like it should have been that way, that the president dethrones his capacity as the head of state. But now, if you look at the bill which was submitted to the IEBC, and you saw yesterday when it was displayed at the courts, that the promoters of the PBI were Waweru and Junet. Now, these people, in their capacity, they are voters and also the representative of the people. Now, the issue is about the initiator and the public participation. Because before we sent the document to the Wananchi, that was for public participation when the draft was out. So the question now is, before that, what was the role of the Wanjiku?
Yes.
Who initiated
Who
the process?
initiated this?
Yes.
It's an interesting strategy because maybe they are looking for a technicality because they don't want to argue the substantive issues. We were reminded, though, that there are 17 issues that they have to challenge. And the initiation, I don't think, is the only issue, and it's not the underlying. But even if they talk about Junet and company being the initiators, those are state officers. Under the schedule of the Constitution that looks at the various roles of offices of constitutional offices and positions created, they are state officers. They are not ordinary citizens who are exercising direct sovereignty.
So they have some extra power that has been given to them by the Constitution.
That High Court walifanya kazi. It's quite an airtight argument, but
let's see how it goes.
We wait to see.
Time for us to take a break and take a look at traffic. As we go to this break, there's a comment that was made by lawyer Paul Mwangi, of course, who's on the side of the appellants, and he was responding to one of the arguments put forth by Professor Kithure Kindiki, who said the people can decide to abolish the entire structure of the Constitution. Yes, the Constitution is supreme, but above the Constitution is the people, and above the people is only the Almighty God. So he's saying basically, with that doctrine of basic structure, the people can come themselves and decide we are going to overthrow it, we are going to turn it around, we are going to, right? They can decide we want to do away with this constitution and bring another constitution. The people. Now, however Paul Mwangi translated this, he says, you see, that's true. So there's nothing like doctrine of something.
Basic structure. Basic structure.
That thing is idolatry, basically. If you're saying that you can't touch this, you're idolizing this thing called the Constitution.
Goodness.
25 minutes to 7. Let's take a look at traffic. Good morning.
Tw- 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
Living isn't just breathing. Living is about taking it all in. Living is not just getting by. Living is taking the roads less traveled. Living isn't just eating. Living is about the art of wining and dining. Living isn't just doing the mundane. Living is about savoring the finer things in life. Because living is not a chore. Living is an art. In the new season of The Art of Living, we explore unearthed gems and discover what makes them home away from home. Join Nailante Kenga as she engages with exciting guests and tours the most exclusive destinations and homes every Sunday, 6 p.m. on KTN Home. Do your callers frequently ask you what stories made the news headlines? Introducing the Call Bulletin, courtesy of Skiza. You can now keep your callers informed and up to date with the latest news updates from KTN News, courtesy of Skiza. Dial star 811 star 795 hash to subscribe today. Set the tone with Skiza. Losing a loved one is never easy. The lingering memories, the what-ifs, but in all the gloom, we find ways of celebrating them. And here at the Standard Tributes, we aim to give your loved ones that befitting send-off. Visit www.standardmedia.co.ke/tributes today and post your loved one's tribute. In addition, get access to funeral services from our trusted vendors. The Standard Tributes, keeping memories alive.
All right, so that Don home going towards that outer ring area, coming off Mombasa Road and also coming in from the CBD, very slow this morning. And we're looking at quite some traffic also outbound on Uhuru Highway into the city, out towards Westlands. Things seem to be slowing down considerably today. It is Friday, getting into the weekend. I know that folks will be on the roads today. So let's just watch out for this. Doesn't look crazy just yet. The bypass is looking pretty good. Coming off of Thika Road, that's a different story. We'll meet with that traffic that's coming off of Kiamba Road as well at the moment. Let's watch out for all these things. But for now, looks like I can get away with it without too much of an issue. Let's text each other, shall we, on 40127 and also on Twitter on SpiceFM KE.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
21 minutes to 7. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. Eric Latif, Nduoko, Wanjiro Gekonyo, and Yegon in the studio this morning. Wanjiro, you seem to be studying that story like it's... you have underlined everything.
I'm vandalizing the newspaper.
What story is that?
It is the one about Nation, page 7. And we are looking at you will pay 6 shillings per kilometers to use the Rironi-Mau Summit Road. Right. And then the article then goes on to talk about this particular construction. It also talks about the Nairobi Expressway and the fact that they are built under PPPs and therefore will be tall roads. You'll have to pay to use them. And they give a figure here. For every kilometer on the highway, a motorist will part with 6 shillings on any section of the road. This translates to 1,050 for saloon cars and 6,300 for big trucks. And I'm like, Kenyans aren't used to paying for things like this. These rates also look pretty high. I mean, Kenyans struggle to pay parking fees. And
6 bob per kilometer. So basically, if you're coming from here, you're heading towards, you're going towards Kisumu. Between Rironi and Mau Summit, you'll have parted with over 1,000 shillings on top of the fuel for your car, on top of everything else. And then you continue the rest of the journey. Now, if there's another PPP that comes there between Mau Summit and, say, Kericho or Kisumu, or you pay some more.
Pay again.
Go to Busia.
Pay again. So if you're in a matatu, the matatu, of course, has to ply the route.
Yep.
They are likely to use this option. It means the fare for passengers goes up.
There's a difference, though, between this particular section of the road with the expressway. The expressway is an alternative. There's still going to be a part where you can use and you don't pay.
Right.
This one is the only road. So as
don't
long
have
as
a
you're
choice.
going that way, you have to use this road. You have to pay. Now, I saw an earlier story that had been done that says they'll not have toll stations in some areas. For example, if you're coming from Karai and you're going into Naivasha town, just that small stretch of the road,
Hatiako.
those locals can still access the road without having to pay.
Yeah.
It's the people who are going now longer distances that will have to be billed for where they're going. The question, though, is, are we going to still have the fuel levy?
Good point. According to these calculations, it sounds like it, but maybe that's a good question to ask. I imagine when I think about how government is sitting thinking and looking at their maths, looking even at the finance bill, fuel levy isn't going anywhere because it maintains the wider road network.
Yep.
So this is a PPP for this particular section, and the operator who is then expected to maintain the road, clear the road in case of accidents, needs to get paid.
Yeah.
Goes to the heart of how do we do development, how integrated our development decisions. Because one development decision, this sounds good, but what are the knock-on effects on the tax that Kenyans are already paying on the fuel levy, like you say, and others?
On top of that, I think now the most person who will be in trouble is the common Wanjiku. Because the said project will cost us around 160 billion. This money will still be deducted from our Kenyan taxes from Wanjiku. Now, after deducting this 160 billion to pay back to the French government, Wanjiku still has to pay for using the road.
The argument,
So that is double charge.
The argument on PPPs is that the money is put up front. I don't know if upfront is paid by the contractor. But the devil is in the details. You have to ascertain. But the idea of PPPs is we don't have the money. This contractor says they have the money. They invest and build, and then they collect from us.
Yeah.
So it can.
So here's the thing. The contractor, for example, in this particular section is getting the support from their government, the French government. And Kenya signed some agreement with the French government. So, like you say, the devil is in the detail. What's the point of Kenya signing an agreement with the French government if a private entity is the one that's being given a contract to do the job?
And I think questions come up then about the cost. Is this 160 billion reflective, or is it inflated?
Yeah.
Questions also come up, was there public participation? The PPP process has very strong public participation provisions. Were those followed? Question also come up, if they start collecting this money, where will it go? But I think
It's all going back to them.
Where will it go?
You know, we don't know where this money will be going to, because this is an upfront payment,
Yes.
just like SGR. That's how they did with it. The SGR was contracted upfront. That by certain duration, we will come back and paying back to the contractor. But
On PPP, we shouldn't pay.
Yeah, exactly.
They pay, and we gradually pay back with some interest.
So we are paying back to the private company. The private company is
Eventually.
not a Kenyan company.
As
So
we
basically,
use.
yes, as we use.
Use and pay.
So is this company getting other concessions like tax concessions and such? Because if it means that the entire amount of money that we are going to pay for the next 23 years is all going to be repatriated to their home country, we have basically just collected our cash and taken it.
Yep, you're just giving it away for free, basically.
And you know,
It's a little bit more simply.
yeah, because whenever we talk about taxation, we hear about now the kind of deals that are made, intergovernment deals. Are they going to be paying income tax? Are they going to be paying all the other taxes? Is part of this money, is this company going actually to pay tax to the government of Kenya? If it's not, then basically it means that every shilling you're paying back is getting out of the country and going.
But
No, now
we
you
but
see
we got a
validation.
road.
Right,
But
now
we
you see
got a road.
validation in requesting
We got
that
a
all
road.
these
We got a
contracts
road that
be
helps
made
us.
public.
We got a road by taking our money and taking it to France to get a road. When we build our own roads here as Kenyans and we contract, let's say, Kirinyaga Construction pays taxes.
Actually, good point. You've even the issue we discussed yesterday about what currency. Are we paying back in Kenya shillings?
Don't know. The
Are we paying
detail.
back in Kenya shillings?
Devil is in the detail.
Yes, because if you have to pay your 1,000, they kusanya the money at the end of the month, it's whatever millions, then they have to go and buy French francs to pay. That is another cost.
Yep.
Maswali mengi.
Mengi sana. Yeah, what are you looking at?
yes, today I'm looking about a sad story about the KDF officers whom we lost last week. And the government, through the KDF, came out telling us who were the fatalities and named the individuals who lost their lives. But now the question is, what caused this crash? Since we had around 11 police KDF officers who perished. I don't know if there were those who survived the crash. But
Yeah,
what
several
is-
survived.
Yeah, so that means it exists the number that a jobber carries on a training board. So, who is culpable for this mess?
What was happening actually? Was it a
Yes.
was it a training mission? Was it supposed to be carrying so many people? What exactly
What
caused
exactly
the crash?
happened? Yes. Because those who lost their lives, if you see their senior officers who have been in the service since 2002, others since 1994, so you are shocked.
they're not
how-
trainers, or
yes,
unless they're
how
trainers.
can an experienced soldier be on a training? So the government is hiding something, and it could be good for the families
Wow.
to know what caused the crash. That is
Yeah.
all. Yeah.
Those all the other aircraft incidents that we've had in the country, especially those involving military choppers. For example, the one that killed Mirugi Karaoke in Marsabit. Was there an inquest? Did we get a report of what happened?
Up to
Or was it
today,
just
they
bad
should be
weather?
good.
The one that crashed in Isli next to Moi Air Base.
They will
and
just
killed
claim
people.
this bad weather.
The
every
police
now and
helicopter that killed Saitoti.
Saitoti.
There was actually an inquiry that was opened, and they sat and they. What was the result of that? What did they say?
Up to today, no one knows the fate. Even after employing the South African guys who are investigating the crash, up to today, we don't have any report what happened to the crash.
Suffice to say that air travel in Kenya is quite risky.
Interestingly enough, it's still safer than being on the
It's,
roads. It's the safest form of transport.
It's very safe, actually, if you look at it
Relative.
Yes, the
overall.
chances
yeah.
of getting an
It's-
accident on a
yes.
flight are
it's
very
it's
minimal.
actually rare.
Very minimal.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then
But when it happens because
It's
of a
catastrophic,
cause. There's
yes.
a cause of it. It
Yes.
cannot just happen unknowingly. There is a purpose.
It's a series of events that
Yes.
lead to this one
crash.
catastrophic one.
which is the point of interest, because if it's like overloading, if it's matters of negligence, then that will mean we will have higher
Someone should account for.
Yeah.
higher
Absolutely.
levels
Yeah.
than we should
The
have.
accountability, I think, is the thing that answers need to be given in terms of what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a story, and this one is quite interesting. So there's a gentleman called Nnamdi Kanu. He's Nigerian. Nnamdi Kanu is the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra in Nigeria. Now, if you know the history of Nigeria and Biafra, 19 what? When the war began?
50, 60.
Yep, I think 1968, when that separatist war was there, the secessionist movement, and saying people want to have their own country carved out of Nigeria. So the gentleman basically has led a new separatist movement. He's been living outside the country, but he's been getting people on his side in Nigeria. At some point, he was said to be living in the UK. Recently, he was arrested and handed over to Nigerian authorities. Initially, Nigerian authorities said he was arrested in London and given to us. The UK government has said, absolutely no way. We did not arrest anybody. We did not hand over anybody. Yesterday, the gentleman's family comes out and says, this guy was arrested in Kenya and handed over to Nigerian authorities. The government of Kenya is dismissing claims that it is linked to the arrests of the extradition of separatist leader Nnamdi Kanu back to Nigeria. Kenya says it cannot ascertain the act took place in the country.
Wow.
Those are two different things. One dismissing and denying, and the other one saying we cannot really
not
ascertain
sure.
whether this guy was arrested. Who arrested him if it's not you?
And where was he arrested?
It's either you know that your security forces arrested the person, or you say our officers have not arrested anybody.
Or
who
you cannot
looks, sounds.
ascertain.
We cannot ascertain whether he was arrested in the country. The authorities had earlier indicated that he was seized in London and extradited to Nigeria. But the head of communications at the British High Commission in Nigeria, Dean Harlock, denied that the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra was arrested or extradited from the UK, and further revealed that the British government was in the process of seeking clarification from Nigeria on the circumstances surrounding the arrest and extradition. we can affirm that Nnamdi Kanu was not arrested in the UK, nor was he extradited from the UK. But the Director General of Immigration Services, Alexander Muteshi, dismissed the claims of Kenya's complicity, arguing it's not possible to tell whether Kanu had entered Kenyan territory. I can't know that, Muteshi said. I am not in the picture of his presence in the country. I am only able to tell if somebody entered the country legally. Government spokesman Cyrus Oguna refused to discuss the matter and instead referred the nation to Mr. Muteshi. So here we are. Again, reminds you of Abdullah Öcalan, the Turkish guy who was arrested here many years ago, and then there was a whole issue of drama at the airport. Was he going to Turkey? Was he taken up by Israeli security forces? Was it what happened? Same.
So my question is Nnamdi Kanu the guy who said that President Buhari was the fake one?
Was the fake president?
There's a fake
Yes.
president.
Yes.
I don't think he's the only one who has said it.
Who was it? Because there was a time that President Buhari is Jibril, somebody known as Jibril.
So they're saying that this person who is claiming to be Buhari is
He's
actually
not
an impersonator.
He's an impersonator.
Oh my goodness. So Ndu, where is Buhari?
Well,
The real Buhari.
isn't that the question?
Eh,
He's there where he is.
Final story before we get to the top of the hour.
So, in terms of where is the money, the Ministry of Health has failed to account for 1 billion shillings. Health Ministry cannot account for 1 billion shillings after top officials failed to provide documents to support some payments, while in some instances, prices of procured items were inflated. Surprise, surprise, no. Auditor General Nancy Gathongo has faulted top Afia House officials for not providing payment vouchers for 1 billion shillings in variations for the leased management equipment services and additional 3 million shillings quarterly payments for hire of transport services. It has also emerged, another number, that the ministry spent 3 billion shillings on emergency relief and refugee assistance, but could not provide payment vouchers for 28 million. According to the audit report by Ms. Gathongo, the taxpayer also lost more than 7 million shillings after officials inflated prices for computers and printers. So, just when you think things had gotten to the worst.
The biggest business in Kenya right now is in the medical sector. And everyone has interest, all the way from government officials to the cartels, up to the county level, and even the NGOs who are sponsoring us. There is much profit to be reaped in the health sector. And that is why a lot of allocation is being done, which it cannot be accounted for.
Because it's an emergency.
It's
and
an
all these
emergency
things.
kit.
No, but can you? Yes, true. This is the COVID emergency. Medical equipment services is not an emergency. That's an ongoing scandal. But the Auditor General has consistently, for the past whatever many years, said that government is unable to account for up to 40% of expenditure. Can you imagine what this means? This means that you procure, you have your finance departments, and you do not maintain documentation. If you needed to get some allowance from Standard Group here, from SpiceFM, what is the procedure that you go through to get even 2,000 shillings? I'm sure the documentation is a lot.
Yeah.
And the reporting and reconciliation is... So what is government telling us? 40%.
I think it even
It's a
goes
ca-
beyond that. I think when
Yeah.
it comes to the Auditor General's report,
Yes.
you could even have all the documentation, but when the audit is being done, so you say you spent money to buy headphones.
It cannot
Can we see
reflect.
the headphones?
Can we see the
It
headphones?
cannot reflect.
Or we can see the headphones, but do these headphones actually cost this much in the market? Now, there's those disparities.
So there's
add up.
inflation.
Yes.
There's lack of supporting documentation, because if you don't have supporting, you should see the trail, but then can't be supported.
Yep.
And then there's another percentage that usually comes out as where they raise queries. Now here they say, hapa kuna kitu,
Yeah.
maybe falsified documents and everything. Up to 40% is not supported. As in, they don't bother to give the documentation because you can't follow it.
Yeah.
It's not an access to information issue, but it's an information issue. If you don't have records, what can you do?
Yes.
The Auditor General can only complain.
Yep. Can only raise it as a flag.
And then Parliament will go through these reports, will condemn, But that ministry will still continue to get money. Because
Exactly.
the only way they can learn is you say, bus.
Freeze.
Freeze.
Until you account, you don't get no more.
Yes,
You're
so-
going to be in that health sector.
Oh, yeah. It's,
All this monkey business happens at the top, because at the delivery level, you find that now maybe an in charge in a health center or a dispensary level. Now you have ordered your drugs from KEMSA. You have listed that I need this and this and this and this. Now what you have been supplied in the sheet is not what you ordered, or at the sheet it might be indicated that you have been supplied maybe, for example, ceftriaxone, such a quantity to this facility, but you have not received. Now you launch a complaint that I have not received these drugs. And remember, these drugs have already been accounted and being paid off, but no one goes back and tracing. Now, if this facility did not get these drugs,
Where
then
did they go?
Where are the drugs? And if it was not purchased, where is the money?
now, this goes to the issue of devolution, because some of these functions actually were supposed to be devolved. And the issue of procurement, especially of drugs, remain centralized economies of scale. There's been an argument about the composition of KEMSA. You know, how do we deal with this age-old problem? Because, on the other hand, the doctors are the same ones saying, re-centralize. And under re-centralization, we didn't get services.
But you see, even here, what is happening is somebody somewhere from either county level to the top and national level is the one that's playing the game.
It's not at the
local
level.
The person in charge of a local health center basically just made a request. I need a requisition. I need this, and the other. And you receive X minus 5. And you start saying, where is the 5 that's missing? And those questions are never answered.
No one answers.
And Diego is telling us you receive Y. You ask for X, you
You
receive
receive
Y.
Y.
And then complaint will never
And all
reach.
this, when you are ordering the drugs, these drugs should replicate with the monthly report that you are supplying.
That is, yes.
Because in a certain environment, there is a common disease compared to another environment.
Let's take this break. Take a look at the news, and then we continue the conversations. Good morning. It's now 7 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning. This is the Newswire. I'm Naya Ubaga. The last of the 82 respondents in the BBI case, among them Martha Karua, John Haminwa and Alicia Ongoya, will today take to the stand to respond to the appeals by President Uhuru Kenyatta, ODM leader Raila Odinga and IBC. Uhuru, Raila and IBC's lawyers will also close their BBI case by responding to some of the issues raised by their opponents. President Uhuru Kenyatta, during his visit in France, says that the government will invest $1 million annually for gender-based violence research and innovation to boost evidence-based programming by 2026. Uhuru further says they'll also establish a gender-based violence survivors fund as an economic requirement for all GBV survivors.
We will introduce a module on GBV in the 2022 Kenya Demographic Health Survey to strengthen the utilization of gender statistics and informing the design and scale-up as well as evaluation of FGM and gender-based violence programming. As well, we will commit to developing gender-based violence management and information system to strengthen gender-based violence prevention and response programming.
Funeral services for the 11 soldiers who died following a plane crash in Oltepes, Kajiado County are expected to take place this weekend. A general funeral service for the officers was held yesterday at Moi Air Base, Isili Airport. The Defense Department has finally released the names of the officers involved in the accident, among them Joshua Obare, Sergeants Noah Wanyonyi, Bob Kipkemboi, Anthony Kamuti, Irene Githinji, Stephen Ombaka, and others. President Uhuru Kenyatta had visited about 10 10 other officers injured in the tragedy in Nairobi, wishing them quick recovery. NARC offices will remain closed until Monday after auctioneers closed it down due to a debt exceeding 1.4 million owed to a former employer. NARC Deputy Secretary General Hesbon Otieno says reduced monthly union dues has affected their ability to pay numerous debts. He further says workers will have to stay home until they're able to pay up the debt and normalize service provision.
Kama chama tutajipanga, tumekuwa tukipitia changamoto ambazo zinajulikana, na sasa kwa sababu tuna ofisi mpya, tunaweza kuenda na kupitia rekodi zote ya madeni ambayo tuko nayo, hata ya wafanyikazi ama matawi yetu, alafu kisha tutalipa. Lakini leo imekuwa ni vibaya sana kwa sababu wafanyikazi walikuwa ofisini. Ikifika Jumatatu, kama tunaweza kuwa tumesuluhisha na hivi vitu ambavyo vimechukuliwa na auctioneers virudishwe ili tuweze kuendelea kupatiana huduma kama kawaida.
That's the Newswire. I'm Lea Ubaga.
Okay, Thika Superhighway. Traffic on the main highway starts at Survey. The service lanes have actually flowing very smoothly all the way to Muthaiga. And then after that, it looks like it's all right. Coming off out of Westlands looks all right, except for a little bit of traffic right around Kagemi coming down. The Red Hill Link Road is what you can use to avoid the traffic that is Uhuru Highway today. Outbound on Thika Road, also some just at the junction heading into the road that leads into Thika town. Shouldn't be too much of an issue though. So little pockets here and there. We're in the middle of we'll be in the middle of traffic hour in about 30 minutes. So let's watch out and see what happens concerning that. But it's not too crazy wherever you look, at least for now. Keep in touch. Let us know. SpiceFM on Twitter where you might be stuck, or text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We're live on SpiceFM. We are also live online. SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. In the room this morning is Eric Latif, Nduoko, Wajiro Gekonyo, our guest host for the week, and our guest host for the day, Yegon, our listener from Matu, works in Wajir, has farming enterprise in Nandi, and has business interests in, is it Moyale?
Yes.
Hey. So what exactly do you do as we move into this conversation? Yegon.
Okay, as you said, Eric Latif, professionally, I'm a medic. That is the Department of Medical Laboratory Sciences. We are the ones who are testing corona and everything for the benefit of a patient to get a quality health care. Outside, I'm a farmer in Nandi. I do dairy farming and sugarcane farming.
In Nandi?
In Nandi.
Okay.
Yeah. In Wajir, I know most of my listeners are listening from Wajir. No, Moyale. I mean
Moyale.
In Moyale. Okay, in Moyale, I'm operating 2 M-Pesa shops and an hotel.
Hey.
So.
And in Wajir? That's where you work?
That's where I work.
And in Mwingi?
Mwingi, Matu, that's my home
Matu.
area. Yes.
Hey.
One, true Kenya.
Yes.
And then definitely very enterprising.
Yeah.
Why Moyale? Why open the business in Moyale? You're not there. You work in Wajir, which is how many hundreds of kilometers?
From Nairobi, it's around 797 kilometers. That is
797 kilometers from Nairobi.
to Moyale. The reason as to why Moyale is when I graduated in medical school, my first job was in Moyale. So this is a place whereby I get to know the interest and what was lacking in the town at that time. This was during from 2016 to 2017. So before then, the road connecting Isiolo to Moyale was still a rough road. And most the people who are settling in Moyale were the residents of Moyale. So, and these residents like a way of carrying their own cash man. So immediately when the road was connected from Isiolo to Moyale, now that is when we had some parents sending their kids to Nairobi for academic, and even it opened job opportunities for people from Meru and elder care workers plus teachers who are now assessing the job opportunities in Moyale. So after getting some information and taking a story on how these people are difficult in sending money back to their homes, that is when we came up with an M-Pesa shop. So we registered an M-Pesa shop. By 6 months' time, we had just had another M-Pesa shop. Now we cultivated a culture of when you are in Moyale, those who are not the resident are called those from down Kenya. So anyone from down Kenya, either you are Meru, Jaluo, any Kikuyu, we are now one tribe. So we have to look for a cocoon on how to live now as a community, as a village. Now, most basic foods for these residents up there is just rice and meat. No ukali, no vegetables, no kiteri. And this thing for somebody who comes from Western Kenya or even here in Mount Kenya, feeding on rice every day. It's very tricky. That is when now we came up with an hotel. Because also we used to receive some discrimination, I'm sorry to say so. When you attend an hotel industry, you can be served last because of your the texture of your
hair
and the color. Yes.
So you opened an eatery now.
Yeah, that's an eatery now.
That is catering for a specific audience.
That is ukali and kiteri.
Yes.
Nothing else.
And boga.
And boga.
Hey.
So the completion of the road from Isiolo to Moyale has made Moyale to be another hub city coming up.
How's your business? How are your businesses doing?
Very nice, because the population continues increasing from those people who are from this side. Now, with the teaching sector, 90% are people who come from this other side. Yeah.
Okay.
Even the medics. Those who are still working on private facilities, majority come from this side.
Wow.
Interesting.
Very impressive.
And very, very, yes, indeed. Karibu sana. Now that you are also a dairy farmer, that's today's proverb. Atakaye kufuga ng'ombe aanze na kuku.
Yes.
One who wants to rear cattle should start with chicken. Start small, grow big. Start with one M-Pesa shop. Get a second one. Get an eatery. The next thing now, this will be an entire building called Yegon or Nandi House. In brackets, established 2021. With all those things combined and put together, and then you also have accommodation services and all. But for that cow to grow, you started with chicken.
With the chicken.
Yes. We have a conversation this hour about gender empowerment, accelerating gender equality and empowerment for all women and girls in Kenya. The issue of gender, especially looking at it from the gender-based violence, is a conversation that has happened in this country for many years. It's a conversation that happens at national level, at policy level, at continental level, now even at global level. And it has taken place many, many years. From your own just observations and assessment, are we making progress in dealing with gender-based violence? And this is not violence against women. It is gender-based violence. Yeah, good.
In my view, so we call it gender-based violence. I think most victims are the women. And most corporate societies, even we now have an organization called FIDA. So mostly those who are abused are the women's side. Though we have men who are suffering from the other side, but no one is following their due causes or how they are suffering. Because majority, those who come out and those which the society looks up to when there is a violence is the women's sector. So for me, we are progressing because you cannot compare from the rural setup when we were young. We used to see our mothers being beaten by our fathers and abused as if they were children or not human beings compared to today. Today, there is a lot of civic education going on. At least right now, women have known their rights, and even when they are grieved or when they are abused in any way of either physical or mental, they now have where to report to. Because the government have just devolved this function to the sub-county level. Right now, as we talk today, we have at the sub-county level, that is now the previous, we used to call it district, sub-county level. We have their offices whereby these rights are being being carried on.
Progress? Zero?
Yeah, definitely progress. Are we where we feel we should be? Possibly not. Progress in terms of employment. Women in senior positions, that has increased. Maybe at the very top level, not as high, but definitely there's a deliberate effort. Women in business, also, you see more of that. But of course, there's still a lot to be done. And I don't have hard statistics, but for instance, some of the work that we do, we look at women in business, women in informal trade. And you'll find that women businesses will still perform less. So the lower income, the lower earning, like in informal trade, women will form the majority. When you look at, for instance, government procurement opportunities, a lot of the companies that go for the high value procurement opportunities are male dominated. So yes, women are, first it's good the issue is on the table. Government has set up ministries, there's a commission and all of that. But on the ground, in terms of integrating, there's still a gap. Then also this gender function gets a lot of lip service in terms of are the resources really there for them to be able to implement. Gender-based violence, we've seen during COVID, unfortunately, very disturbing stories. Then this week again, because there's been a lot of emphasis on this, showing that gender-based violence or violence against women has increased even as the economy opens up. So it increased when it closed because of this, they were saying it's the close proximity of being in the house and also the financial pressures. But even as it opens up again, there has been a spike. And again, they are saying it comes back to the economy. So this idea that women in the household are at risk, or a number of women are at risk of gender-based violence is still a challenge. And children should never have to witness that. Whether it's violence on the woman, which is the majority, or even violence against the man, because then those children see this and they replicate it. Yep. So I think it still needs to be considered an issue and not just paid lip service. Yeah.
So a lot more effort needs to be taken into this, into addressing the issues. I think as well that yes, there's been some considerable progress that has been made. When it comes to seeing it being mainstreamed at government level, where a person as the president actually discusses the issue of gender-based violence and discusses the issues of equality. And then you see, for example, the police service and the push to have gender mainstreaming as at police level. Every police station, do you have a gender desk? Those they may look like small steps, but they are big steps. Because like Yagon, you're saying, presently, almost everybody is aware that this is violence, that this is an abomination, that this is wrong. So it's possible for people to raise an issue, to report this issue. It's even easier for people to report the issue, whether it's at the local chief's office, whether it's at the local police station. The issue is those that are given the duty to receive the complaints, how do they handle them? How do they handle the complaints going forward? Do they actually treat you as somebody who's been abused, or do they laugh at you? Do they, treat you with scorn? We saw the other day a story that was published about men in Kirinyaga, was it Kirinyaga or Embu, who are complaining that they are actually undergoing gender-based violence in their homes, and they cannot raise this because they go to the chief, and the chief is like, unapigwa na mama.
Wanaume wa aina gani?
Toka hapa, Yeah. So the duty bearers are the ones now that where the issue has to be. Have we really changed the attitude of the people to whom you report gender-based violence? Is there a structure of when this is reported, how do you handle it?
I think.
At some point, now why we are witnessing the male gender violence now is because at the lower level, the women now are daring to go to compete with them, and to them they are now decreasing from their responsibilities. So automatically when you are no longer being a responsible in your family or your house, obviously we will be abused by the other gender, because it is abdicated that the roles of a man has his roles as the head of the house, but now you have
abdicated that role
to the
In fact, Egon, what you're saying is really true. Gender violence is about power, and it's about the abuse of power. Yes. So if you empower one gender at the expense of the other, then it will flip, where now it will be about men. And this comes out on the issue of the boy child, for instance. There's been a lot of emphasis on the girl child, which is necessary and important. But the boy child has then, in turn, also suffered. So maybe we need to also look at the social, attitudes and the social kind of values that create gender discrimination and gender violence, and deal with the root cause. Otherwise, all we'll do is succeed in empowering one gender at the expense of the other.
I think we need to normalize having balanced conversations, and I think we need to normalize having these conversations in the open, because a lot of what we see, gender-based violence is a result. And I think that's one thing we need to see. The violence is a result of attitudes that have been practiced over time. So when you see this violence coming out against boys or girls, it's the result. It's compacted attitudes that have been allowed to be practiced over and over again, and it results in this kind of violence, or that results in inaction towards this violence. The chief saying, "How can you be a man if you have been beaten up by somebody?" A woman who says that a man does not love you if he does not punish you, and things like that. So the result is really not the issue. It's the underlying problems that we need to actually have. And unfortunately, a lot of these discussions are taken and had out of the public glare. In 2021, there are still women, mothers, who are raising their boys in a certain way, who are raising their girls in a certain way, that, if anything, are proliferating these attitudes that result in this kind of behavior. And that's why I think we need to normalize having these conversations out in the open.
Yeah.
That when a young woman is beaten up, for example, and her elder aunties ask her, "What did you do?" Or
you must have done something.
You must have done something wrong.
There is a
or that a woman has been raped or abused, and how her mentors or her mother or aunties ask her, "Where did you go?" or "What were you wearing?" that would have provoked that kind of action towards you. So do you see? The end result is not the issue. It's all these attitudes and where it has started from that need to be dealt with.
UN Women has been supporting some conversations. It's called the Generation Equality Forum. That's a global gathering for gender equality convened by UN Women and co-hosted by the governments of Mexico and France in partnership with youth and civil society. This forum kicked off in Mexico in March and has been continuing in Paris, France, since the 30th of June, and it ends today, launching a series of concrete, ambitious and transformative actions to achieve immediate and irreversible progress towards gender equality. So it responds to the fact that despite the commitments made in Beijing in 1995 to take strategic, bold action and gender equality progress, not a single country can claim to have achieved gender equality in the world. With women's rights at risk of rolling back further as a result of COVID-19, the forum is a rallying point to finally achieve the human rights of all women and girls. Our President Uhuru Kenyatta attended this forum in Paris, and he's in Paris. He's been in Paris. And he made a commitment at the Generation Equality Forum to increase investments and actions towards preventing and responding to gender-based violence. That's a key milestone towards achieving an equal Kenya. So you see, we are at a point where a president is making a commitment on this particular issue. A president has also made another commitment on the issue of female genital mutilation. All at presidential level, commitments being made on behalf of the government on we need to do something to ensure equality and to bring equality. Let's bring in a guest who's on the line. She's going to join us now. Angelina Sikanda, she's a fundraising and program development manager at the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, CREW. Angelina, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
Now, the president made this commitment in Paris. There have been many other commitments that have been made by governments, successive governments since 1995 on entrenching gender equality. We've been asking ourselves the question whether we've made the progress. So let's just hear as well from you. Have we made progress, or are we making progress, a meaningful progress, in getting to an equal Kenya?
Well, we've made progress. It's not enough. There's still more that needs to be done. But this is the first time that the head of state has taken bold steps towards talking about this particular issue of gender-based violence. For the longest time, it's been the purview of the civil society organizations, the social development departments within government, the legal aspects of this issue. Those are the spaces that we talk about gender-based violence. So either you're talking about cases or you're talking about writing up stories of individuals who've had experiences of violence. But we've not had concrete political action. We have laws that talk about it and have provided for means and ways of protection. But bold steps to address the issue is still a challenge, including the fact that services are not yet where we need them to be. There are some huge gaps that still need to be addressed, especially around safety and security. And we have not seen deliberate action by government to address this issue. There has been a call to action in several platforms that we've had over time. So this, we're taking it as one of the most bold steps that government has taken to address these issues more directly and to safeguard the lives of many women, girls, and men who continue to suffer violence in the hands of family, friends, relatives out here in our community.
Okay. When these conversations started, it was not the beginning of the violence, right? The conversations and the actions which were then recommended along a wide array of, participants came at a point whereby it sounded as though it was enough. We have seen now that these issues have become worse over time. What do you think needs to be done by the different actors in all of this to get us to the point whereby this is under control?
Well, there's a lot that needs to be done. One of the things that we're trying to make sure happens is let us not shy away from this issue. Let us speak about gender-based violence for what it is. And let's not try to sugarcoat it or hide the issues behind culture, behind excuses that seem to normalize the aspects of violence, that it's okay to be beaten and that's fine, that it is wrong to seek for help, that it is wrong to get out of a relationship. So what needs to be done is open conversation to acknowledge that indeed violence does happen in our community. Violence is hurting our people. We're losing lives. We're losing people in the name of violence. And therefore, it's time to engage. And therefore, provide platforms whereby people who are in relationships or people who are living in households where they feel unsafe, where they feel unprotected, can be able to be supported to get out of this environment. You don't have to stay in an abusive relationship, for example. You don't have to go and abuse a child simply because you have power and you're older. You don't have to go out there and make derogatory statements about people that are false, or just bully people and harass everybody out there and think you can get away with it. The police may not catch you today, but can we have personal responsibility where everybody who sees any form of violence out here is able to seek help, is able to report, and that authorities will take the necessary action to be able to root out from ourselves these people who keep making our lives very difficult. Nobody gets into a relationship with the hope that they're going to be violated. The idea is to thrive and to be able to live a life that's fulfilling. But then things happen, and we must agree that as human beings, we may not always agree on a daily basis. It's okay to disagree, but it doesn't mean you have to engage in violence as a result. That you don't have to mistreat the other party, you don't have to insult your friend just because we did not agree on something.
Angelina.
And that it is okay not to be okay.
Yes.
Thank
Angelina,
Yes.
first of all, congrats on the great work you're doing, very important work that needs to be done. And yes, it's extremely disturbing to see what's coming out from the pandemic. But to what extent, because you've said we can't blame culture and we shouldn't hide behind culture, but to what extent is the movement missing out on the big question of culture? Because isn't it about culture? The women's liberation movement of the 50s and the 60s was about basic rights, the right to work, right to vote. Now those have been secured, not totally, but to a large extent. Now we are talking about softer issues. I'm the mother of 2 Gen Z young ladies, and the conversations I hear them having and the way they relate with young men, I'm still hearing very, chauvinistic and very negative attitudes from some of the young men at that age. So the law is in place, the policies are in place. Isn't it about time we started addressing culture? And how do we address culture so that we protect women, we support women, and also make sure we protect the boy child?
Well, one of the things about culture is that culture is dynamic. It's not static. And over time, we've changed most of our rules of engagement based on knowledge and understanding that indeed this no longer holds water. So culture, for example, where you're saying that, she was abused because of her.
All right, I think we've had an issue. We're having an issue with Angelina's line.
Conversation.
Angelina,
What kind of conversation?
Sorry,
Yes.
sorry, Angelina. I think we lost you there for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could repeat what you were saying.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that there are certain aspects of our culture. Culture is nothing, there's nothing wrong with culture, but there are certain aspects that really need to change. And some are not actually cultural, but just misconceptions that people have come to develop over time. For example, there is no culture that says if you're beaten, you need to stay in that relationship. Every culture provided for a platform whereby if you're abused or in an abusive relationship or there are conflicts within the household, there were platforms to engage, and therefore you could reach out to a relative, an uncle, an auntie, a brother, somebody else would be out to reach out to you and see how to resolve the conflict. But the kind of society we're living today is such that you don't have those platforms. You can no longer run to your brother, you can no longer run to your auntie for support. So where is a platform to engage and address the conflict, such that me as a woman, me as a man in this relationship, I can be supported to find an alternative way to address the issues? Because as human beings, we are going to, disagree on very many issues. So where's the platform to engage? Let's have that conversation and be able to provide opportunities for people, for example, to go for couple therapy, for example, if a child is on opportunity to reconcile the relationship. If it's completely unattainable, then can we allow people to just leave a relationship and that it is okay? That nobody has to say, ndoa ni kuvumilia, be patient. He's going to change. Nobody changes because we ask them to.
Angelina, so my question to you, because I agree with you, what programs are you running or would you like to see the government run to bring that to take us to that level where people are going for counseling services, where families, at the family level, really there's consideration about what we are modeling, because we've had a lot of focus on the law, a lot of focus on policy, a lot of focus on setting up institutions. All this has happened. But in terms of the culture, or in terms of the values that people espouse, is enough being done? And if not, what would you like to see done to influence things from the household level?
For us, we are running programs where we have couple programs, for example, where we allow couples in conflict to come in and have conversations. Our neighbors, Rwanda, have a very good model they call Indashikirwa, and which is something you're trying to encourage our government here to adopt, whereby you have platforms within the community setting where a couple in conflict can have an open conversation together without the influence of relatives or in-laws, and simply have an independent individual to support them through the issue. So they'll be able to have this conversation about what it is that is causing conflict, what are the issues of contention, and then come up with an amicable solution where at the end of the day, everybody feels valued and respected. The president of Kagame even invested money to that program, and it's one of the models that has been awarded openly. Secondly, is having a robust system of implementing these very laws and good policies that we have, whereby there has to be sensitivity. When I tell you I've been violated, don't be insensitive and start asking derogative questions like, what were you doing? What did you dress? Rather, believe me first, listen to my issue, and then advise me on where to seek help. So if it's extreme and needs further action by the authorities, then that can be facilitated. If it's medical support I require, I can access without feeling discriminated or demeaned and made to feel that I'm inferior because I went through violence, and that it is okay to be violated, to experience violence and be unwell, but there's an opportunity to change the situation and get better. So if we welcome the opportunities for people to heal, if we welcomed and use our facilities better to provide like safety shelters for people in crisis, that would be awesome. As it is today in Kenya, if you get violated, they are not just places managed by government. All the ones we have are privately owned, and it's really expensive to maintain them. So that remains one of the biggest challenges we need to address.
Thank you very much, Angelina, for joining us. Angelina Chikanda is a fundraising and program development manager at the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, CREW. We are talking about accelerating gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls in Kenya. Have a lovely day, Angelina. 25 minutes to 8 o'clock, time for us to take a break, take a look at weather and traffic, and then we continue the conversations. Good morning.
.24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
As the Kenyans are roared into the home straight here, 4 Kenyan queens have lit up this balmy Bahamian night.
It's where the rivalry is unmatched, where the soul meets the track, where the great are distinguished from the good. An arena where the records are broken.
A new world record. It's not just been beaten, it's been obliterated.
A stage where the legends are born. For Team Kenya, the Olympics is more than just a sport. It is our tradition. It's an event that has put Kenya on the roadmap. The Standard Group lets you watch every minute and every action live in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, because we live for Team Kenya. We live for the game. At Standard Group, sports lives here.
Mamboni Express na Naivas. As an authentically homegrown brand with over 30 years in operation in Kenya, Naivas is excited to announce our new express store along Windy Mbingu Street, the first of our express stores in the CBD. Visit the new Naivas Express store along Windy Mbingu Street to enjoy exclusive deals and offers as well as the same great prices on all your household shopping. Naivas saves you money. Mambo Express.
Hello.
Halo, umesikia?
Nimesikia nini?
Hujasikia habari? Hebu acha nikuambie. Kile kimetokea.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Don't wait for hearsay. Dial star 550 star 1 hash to read the standard e-paper from the convenience of your mobile phone for only 20 shillings from your telecom line. And stay
Conditions
up
in
to
Nairobi
date.
this morning at 15, highs of 24 and lows of 12. It's cloudy in Nyeri at 14, highs of 22. The lows will also be at 12. Mostly cloudy conditions in Nakuru at 15, highs of 26 and lows of 14 today. 22 the high in Eldoret. It's sunny at 13. 29 will be the high in Kisumu. It's sunny at 18. And sunny conditions in Kakamega at 17 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 14. 29 is what we're looking at as a high in Mombasa. It's raining in some parts at 22. 23 and sunny in Malindi, highs of 28 and lows of 25. 26 will be the high in Kampala, where it's mostly sunny at 19. 21 will be the high in Dar es Salaam, highs of 30. And 20 is what we're looking at highs in Johannesburg. It's getting cooler and cooler. At 3 now, we'll see lows of just that today. Rain showers at 25 in Lagos, highs of 30 and lows of 25. And clear conditions in Kinshasa at 22. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 21.
Spice up your life.
All right, still some on Thika Road today. The service lane's looking good, at least until Muthaiga. Outbound on Thika Road also, right around the turnoff going towards Thika Town. We see some traffic that's held up there, but we'll keep an eye for that, for that. An accident along Mombasa Road this morning just after Kappa is slowing things down considerably. Lorry, Matatu, everybody said hello in a way we don't like. And that means what? It means traffic. And it's in and outbound now, right around that area. It's filling all the way to General Motors. And in the other direction, at Imaradaima, it has basically come to a stop. So watch out for that. Wayaki Way also looking quite busy as you're heading onto Uhuru Highway into and out of the CBD. We're going to see some heavy traffic, at least for now, until about 9 o'clock. We'll keep an eye out for that. The ICD route from Mombasa Road headed to the Southern Bypass. Give you some good vibes this morning. Use it if you can. Coming off Limuru Road, going into town, use Wangari Maathai. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. That's how you can get in touch. You get stuck or you find a good route, let us know. Text as well on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
20 minutes to 8, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. In the room, Eric Latif, Nduoko, Wanjiru Gekonyo, and Yegon, Hussein Yegon. He is here with us from Moyale, or if you want to think he's from Wajir, okay. If you want to think he came from Nandi, okay. If you want to think he came from Mwingi, okay. He visits all those places in a month.
He's a true Kenyan.
Yes.
And he's got not only visits, he has sunk his roots. He has business, a trail.
Yes.
You're building the local economies of all those places.
Empowering the common mwananchi.
There you go. Na vijana wapate nafasi za ajira. Unatafuta kiti gani?
You see, this is what is the problem with Kenyans. The moment you see somebody doing well, you imagine they have to go into politics.
So which one is the true Kenyan?
And then you wonder, how come we have the worst characters in politics if every time we see the best characters, we tell them to go into politics? Does it mean he won't make it?
So how does that translate? If we have asked the best characters to go into politics, how do they become bad characters then?
everyone complains about our politicians. Yet when you see somebody doing something remarkable, you say, so why aren't you running? Where's the disconnect? Discussion for another
day. Let's talk about a rising spate of insecurity in Nairobi. Series of muggings have been reported by people on social media. People just come out and say, you know what, I was walking around Nairobi in the CBD and I was mugged by this group of people. Or I was driving, and we've seen videos as well, emerging of in traffic, and a boy just comes and plucks the side mirrors and walks gingerly away. People talking about thugs getting into their compounds in the various estates, coming in and they're just vandalizing. They're just doing small petty thieves and petty criminals. Now, the police have responded to this. The DCI has basically said, Kinoti, the director of CID, has said, you know what, we'd like you to report these cases so we can start dealing and tracking exactly where these criminals are operating from. The Nairobi Regional Commander of Police, Augustine Dhumbi, said he's deploying more officers around the city. This will include GSU, regular police, and plainclothes police officers. And he said, do not be scared if you come across many officers in uniform and plainclothes. They are deployed to protect you from muggers, robbers, and other petty criminals that we've been complaining about on social media.
But you know
Why did
something?
you laugh?
I have to, because it is it's not a good indication when police are deployed and people are told, don't be scared.
Yes.
In other words, other than muggers, the people that we most fear are the police.
The police.
In fact, possibly people fear the common mwananchi fears the police more than muggers. Right?
It's true.
So that's one aspect. But the issue we are discussing here, I think, is the rise in crime.
I must also say that I've noticed patrol vehicles with GSU officers, armed GSU officers patrolling, and I was asking myself, okay, so is there some intelligence that that they've heard something that's about to happen? That's why you're seeing GSU officers on the road. But now reading that from the regional commander, I can see. So he's basically talking about we are beefing up security in the best way we can to address all manner of crime, because maybe the small muggings could be an indicator of these guys just getting emboldened and doing bigger things.
Poverty up due to COVID, 4%. Let me start on that. Because I think the cycle of crime rises around Christmas time, rises around elections, and obviously rises around big economic crisis. So COVID, poverty, and these are World Bank figures from last year. We don't have current figures. 2 million Kenyans slipped into poverty. Unemployment doubled. Work hours reduced from 50 to 38. 1/3 of businesses shut down. So people don't have a living, don't have money. And it has to come from somewhere. So crime will go up. Then I would say on the other hand, the deployment of GSUs is the mindset of this administration that are securitizing, militarizing their policing efforts. Because why are you riding around with a gun?
Why not?
Because there are approaches to security. Okay, first of all, there's the socioeconomic aspect. But why is he forced to say, don't be scared? Why is he asking people to report? It implies people aren't reporting. And it implies people are scared of the police. So the community is not working in conjunction with the police. So what is security? If it is something that is alien to the community, that is failed policing approach.
What would you like them to do? There's an increase in the cases of muggings, just petty theft. There's an increase, and you're walking around or you're driving from Standard Group this morning, and then these guys come and they just grab your side mirrors and move. What would you like the police to do?
First of all,
go and start addressing the soft issues.
No, okay.
Exclusive to this.
What I was saying is, in the first instance, when you are increasing your police numbers, that you have to do that in line with. You have to deal with the socioeconomic cause. There's been a lot of discussion, and we even had it here, IMF saying, oh, we are providing the economic cushion. That's lies, because government says they are providing a cushion. What they are doing is they are taxing Kenyans more. So the statistics are saying Kenyans have moved into poverty. Government is saying, well, we are broke. You still have to pay more taxes. So the cause of the problem, which is the impoverishment, is not being dealt with. So number one. Then the second is your method of policing. The moment you're instituting a method that Kenyans are scared of, there is a problem.
But by the time you're putting, I think there's a message that is being sent here. Because if there are muggings going on in certain areas, and I think the message of a security personnel, armed security personnel, is going to send a message to the thugs. And I don't think that there's a better message that can be sent than that at that point in time. Because if you have police presence at a roundabout, like Globe Cinema, for example, where we've heard many stories in the last couple of weeks, the chances are that whatever would have happened in terms of thuggery will not happen with the presence of an armed security personnel right there. So in terms of them coming out, it sends I think, a very strong message of deterrence to anybody who's going to try and do anything if their presence is felt there.
In fact,
now, dealing with the issues that have brought out more crime is something that will not be done in a day. Dealing with those issues to say that Kenyans are feeling a lot more pressed when it comes to being able to eke out livelihoods for themselves on a daily basis is not obviously something that's going to be sorted out with the police being put on the street. But it sends a message to those who would try to do something in the middle of the street in broad daylight when you have armed security personnel on the streets. It's a message.
But today, these muggers are very daring to.
Oh, for sure.
In fact, they have forced Kenyans into fear. Today, when you are walking along Nairobi, the probability of you being mugged
is very high.
Is very high compared to you running your errands. But let's see this. Before the Kenyan government stopped the police recruitment, we used to have every yearly, we have around 10,000 police officers being added to the system. Today, 2021, the recruitment exercise have stopped for around 3 years. That means we have a shortage of around 30,000 police officers. So when the county commander says that he will be going to deploy more security, I don't know where these security officers are coming from. Because there is a shortage. You cannot compare the state of security before and now. And let us see the ratio. What is the ratio? Now the common mwananchi, the policing ratio versus mwananchi has just increased. One police officer now mans around 790 something compared to when it was 352. One police officer to 352 people because of the shortage of recruitment.
Yes.
Why was the recruitment frozen?
Now, the recruitment was frozen because there was a matching between the administration police and Kenyan police service. But if we see those who migrated to the Kenyan police service from administration cannot match the number which we used to recruit every year.
But then there's still recruitment, just maybe that we are not recruiting as many.
No, there's no recruitment on
Wait, but we saw the president seeing over the passing out.
Okay, we have
Kiganjo,
the passing out
many,
of prison officers and the KDF. Of late, we have not have a police.
In Embakasi, we have seen, and that's AP training unit. In Kiganjo as well. In Kajiado, we've seen the passing out of officers.
This pass out which you are showing, Latif, is when these officers were absorbed to the Kenya Police Service, they had to be retrained. And now the police also introduced a cadet rank in the police sector. So those whom we saw last time graduating from Kiganjo were the cadets. Those whom we saw graduating from Embakasi were those who were matched from the administration to the Kenya police. And also we had another pass out in Kanyonyo. Those were specifically for border patrol officers.
Yeah.
But for the common, the regular police, which you used to call regular police, we have never had a recruitment.
So police numbers have been a problem for a while. Yes. It is possible, and this is my speculation, as we know, government is financially constrained, so recruitment is a problem. And that's another issue. But the point I was making is it's unfortunate that Kenyans are so scared, and justifiably so, that we will accept militarized policing in place of proper, effective policing. The interaction between community and police should be one based on principles of community policing, not one based on coercive, militarized policing using guns. The moment police now normalize their use of patrol with guns, the criminals will have to also upgrade to use guns. So we are not, actually all we are doing is we are escalating the level of violence.
They're already using guns.
Yeah, exactly.
Criminals are already using guns.
Exactly.
It's not going to make it worse or better.
And I'll give you a very practical example of community policing, which is a policing that ensures, one, you need enough personnel, but you also need to build trust between the community and the police so that people report. So Kenyatta should not be telling people, please report. The moment people aren't reporting, your policing system has broken down because you will not get intelligence that you need because the intelligence comes from the community. Those criminals emanate from the community. They operate in the community. If the community is not working with police, the police must use coercion against the criminals and against the community. I'll give you a practical example. 2017, when we had the incidents of police brutality, and we had, especially in Nairobi, where you had the violence around the elections, after the announcement of the elections. If you looked at the trend, because some of that was even politically instigated, like us were in, I'll say, in one of the sub-counties in Nairobi, where we knew that was instigated by political leaders in the area, instigating youth to fight back and to riot. To the extent that the police were afraid to enter into those areas. The areas that had community policing structures were the first to calm down. So we had places like in Kahawa Sukari, where that situation was very quickly contained. When we went under, we discovered there is a relationship. People were able to discuss and say, yes, kumeumana. The politics has gone south, but we know one another. Can we discuss and see how we can calm the political tensions? At the end of the day, policing without the community is a failed model. It is a model that is actually more injurious to us because community policing also has the other part of you have accountability, whereby those rogue police officers that go around harassing youth are also reported. So that is my point.
I feel you're amplifying one aspect and sort of, putting aside all the other aspects. Very many aspects of community engaging with police. If you look at police stations and how people interact with the local police stations, do people report in local police stations? They do.
Reporting is one of the big challenges in policing.
It is always a big challenge.
People don't report.
It is always a big challenge, but are people reporting? Are people reporting incidences?
I'll put it
How
to you,
can you say
not.
people are not reporting?
They're under-reporting. Otherwise, why is Kenyatta asking people to report?
Under-reporting is not reporting.
Exactly.
People are reporting.
So make your point, because you're saying that community policing is one aspect.
Reporting. The DCI comes and says, okay, I notice that there's an increase in this and we want you to. This is how you can report. The DCI has come up with even a tool where people can now report. There's a toll-free number where people can call and report. There's an SMS shortcode number where people can call and report to the DCI. The DCI has rolled this in support, aided by, I think, UK Aid or USAID. They have rolled that out. And Kenyatta is basically saying, there's this tool, by the way, guys. If you're mugged and you're wondering where's the nearest police station, at that point, you can just call this number and it will be reported.
Great.
This is one. The other one is the response. What is it that people are saying when they go onto social media and they report that, you know what, we are seeing an increase in the number of muggings? What are people saying? We want to see more police officers. Where are our police officers?
Right.
Police respond by saying, here we are. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to redeploy from some areas and put them on beat patrol. So that, one, it acts as a deterrent. And that's why we're even putting in now the GSU and all acts as a deterrent because we know these are petty criminals and all they need to see is police presence. And number two, you also walk around feeling more confident. that, you know what, as I am walking around as CBD today, there is a likelihood that there is a plainclothes police officer within 100 meters, or there's a uniformed police officer within 200 meters. It increases that sense of confidence in you to go ahead with your business.
But then you've reinforced
but you're
what
trying
I'm
to
saying.
trash all these efforts that the police are making.
You've reinforced what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is Nairobians have become we are so scared that we've agreed a policing model that actually is a failed policing model. And the reason I say these measures need to be taken, yes. But as long as you do not have that confidence by the public in the police, through the community level of interaction, you're giving a short-term solution to a problem that will not go away. Right now, it's in the public domain because of the very extenuating circumstances we have. But what I'm saying is this: we need enough police. The investment has to be there. And I think that's the point Yegon has made. We need the police to engage, we need a policing approach. And I don't agree community policing is one aspect. It's an approach. And what I'm quarreling with is the militarization, where until we see a gun, we don't feel safe. Let us see that gun. At the end of the day, I could be the victim of that gun, a stray bullet. We do not want to go the militarization route. And unfortunately, as Nairobians, we are so scared we'll take anything. At the end of the day, that bullet will come for me, or it will come for actually possibly my younger cousin, sibling, brother, because that is what happens. The presence of guns on the street is not something we should be celebrating or thinking it's the solution to poverty and socioeconomic need. That, to me, is the problem.
There is a problem of people being robbed at gunpoint today. There's a problem of people not being able to drive from a particular point A to point B without their vehicles being vandalized. And there is, in my opinion, a deterrent right now that is being used at this point. It's a deterrent. It is a deterrent, whichever way you want to look at it, that it is very unlikely that a thug will see, or somebody who is coming to commit a crime will see that presence and go ahead and operate with that presence in that area. It could be a stopgap measure. It is a short-term solution, but it is a solution for now. We've talked about the fact that the emergence of such crime was not the same 3 years ago or 18 months ago before the onset of COVID. So we're dealing with an emergency situation as is. For me, you need emergency solutions right now.
If we deal with it as a stopgap measure, how are we dealing with the root cause, and what lessons are we learning to ensure we do not aggravate our policing approach to, at our expense? Because we must acknowledge police violence is real. Police harassment and intimidation of the public is real, and of the youth is real.
And that is why the public doesn't have the trust with the police.
That is why,
because even if they
take it out on the police, because they are the ones that we interact with on a daily basis.
That is why Kinoti has
the
to
lack
say
of trust
don't
is
be.
with
the
the
moment
government.
You have to tell them, don't be scared.
of action even after report. Because today these phones have an email number. What is the purpose of email number? Someone is marked, he or she runs to the DCI, reports, the email number is being taken, but what follows next? And these phones are being marked not to be thrown away, but to be reselled. So I don't think even after selling the phone, the email number changes. That is why we see the results if someone was murdered. That's when
you see the results. We'll continue this conversation for a while into the next hour. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Time for the news. It's now 8 a.m.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. Nairobi, Western, Nyanza and coast regions are predicted to record overwhelming cases of COVID-19 during the fourth wave that is said to commence mid of this month. Kenya Medical Research Institute says this is due to the increasing dominance of the Delta variant, also known as the Indian variant. The institute further says they have about 6 variants of concern that are taking dominance over the initial one. Meanwhile, Acting Health Director General Patrick Amoth has urged Kenyans to put their guard up as the cold season creates a conducive environment for the virus to spread.
But we believe certain measures that we took early in the month of June could preempt the development of a fourth wave coming in July. We should remain alert and continue to adhere to the interventions that are put in place to ensure that we are protected.
This comes as the country yesterday recorded a 9.8% positivity rate and 6 fatalities. Deputy President William Ruto says the fight against corruption will succeed the day we remove ethnic and politics from that fight. He has told his opponents to stop using the justice system to blackmail and intimidate people on matters to do with politics. Ruto says it's time politicians stop using corruption claims against each other to get to the top.
This whole fight that is political is a fight by people who do not have ideas on how to take Kenya forward. They resort to using force, blackmail, intimidation to try and support their weak ideas and their weak plans. We want to tell them, let us leave the criminal justice system out of the politics of Kenya.
87 million worth of cash bail deposits are missing at Judiciary. Auditor General Nancy Gathungu, in her review of the Judiciary's books for the stated period, revealed that the money was missing from Embu, Nakuru and Malindi courts. She further stated that at least 2.7 million shillings was lost in Embu, 84.6 million in Nakuru and 1.5 million in Malindi in similar circumstances reported last year. Gathungu said the nature of the loss recovery strategies and court proceedings on the matter were, however, not disclosed. Zambia will hold a state funeral today for the founding president Kenneth Kaunda, who died aged 97 after being taken ill. He'll be buried on Wednesday next week. Kaunda was being treated for pneumonia at a military hospital in Lusaka before he succumbed. And finally, a wildfire has burned 90% of the village that recorded Canada's highest ever temperature. Local MPs say the fire has caused extensive damage to Lytton in British Columbia and to surrounding critical infrastructure. The village this week recorded the country's highest ever temperature of 49.6 Celsius. That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, so we're still looking at blotches of traffic on Mombasa Road, headed out into the city, coming out of Westlands. Also, we see quite some. Allsops, that's another story. At the Thika Road Town Junction, there's a problem there this morning and it's slowing things down considerably. Limuru Road also looks a bit slow. Let's take a look at Jago Road. It's backed up all the way to Hamza and then heading out into the city, right around the City Stadium roundabout. Also a little bit slow there. But it shouldn't be too crazy from what we see. I don't think we've seen crazy traffic this morning just yet. Hopefully it'll remain this way for most parts of the morning. Tell us if it doesn't. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127. It's getting into the weekend. Let's keep things moving, shall we?
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your
It's
day.
5 minutes after 8. Very good morning to you. Welcome to the Situation Room. This is the third hour of the show. We are on SpiceFM, Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri and Malindi. We are online all over the world on SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website www.spicefm.co.ke. And for the next 1 hour, we are also live on KTN Home. Good morning to our audience on TV. This is your radio experience on television. In the room with you this morning, my name is Eric Latif. We have Ndu Oko, Wajirugi Konyo, our guest host for the week, and our guest host for the day is Yegan, our listener from Matu.
And
Wajir, and Nandi,
and
Moyale,
voila.
and Nairobi. And he is in the studio with us this morning. Today's proverb as we begin the hour, atakaye kufuga ng'ombe aanze na kuku. One who wants to rear cattle should start with chicken. Start small, grow big. Do not despise small beginnings.
Because a cow, a chicken could turn into a cow.
Chicken could turn into a cow. Yeah. A chicken, you learn how to milk a chicken and then you now know how to milk a cow.
That was my thinking, but
that's where you were, right?
I know I kept quiet because I was like, I don't farm. Maybe this is how it goes. I thought you might be successful with chickens and not with cows and vice versa. I would have thought it would go one cow and then many cows.
As opposed to two chickens and then one cow.
From chicken, then you migrate to a coat.
Yes.
So that you can remove now the fear of milking, because this coat I can manage even to hold the leg and milk. Before now migrating to the big elephant now.
I'm so glad you raised that question, and I respect that.
Don't suffer alone. Just
as urbanites now. Yes.
No, you've caught up.
Yes.
Atakaye kufuga ng'ombe aanze na kuku. Yegon, let's talk politics. Because you really are like our in-house political commentator. On matters politics, you always call in and contribute. There are stories all over. One, we know that the president, once he comes back from France, he'll be doing some series of tours around the country.
Yes.
He has to go to Kambani. He's going to Rift Valley.
Yeah.
He's going to dismantle. He's going to tour the country as the president and head of state, right? We've seen the inroads that the deputy president has made in especially Mount Kenya, and a kind of pushback that has been launched by those who are opposed to the deputy president, but still the progress that DP is making. Recently we saw the woman rep for Kiamba County crossing over Komwendo wa Aste Aste and saying now she is Tanga Tanga Damu and others. Does he really have a chance, the deputy president, in securing a substantial number of votes in Mount Kenya?
Yes, good question, Eric Latif. And I think this is a very interesting topic. Okay, before discussing Mount Kenya, we have to see first what relationship to Mount Kenya have between William Ruto and them themselves first, before now making an inroad towards Mount Kenya. And we can trace back this back in 2007. These are brothers who are fighting each other politically. They were competing against each other politically. And we know what happened. Then thereafter we had a good grand coalition government, which to my view it was a very successful one. Then the coming of the ICC cases, which also it strengthens the relationship of William Ruto with Mount Kenya. First, we saw when Ruto was mentioned in ICC, he was first dismissed as agriculture minister by the wing, that is the ODM wing, which he had sponsored it to the government. And from there, we saw now former President Mwai Kibaki, who is the son of Mount Kenya, reappointing William Ruto to be the Minister of Higher Education before resigning now when there was a month to appear before the ICC. So the relationship in Mount Kenya and William Ruto is very strong. That is why we have now our other competitors trying to dismantle it. But this is the thing that it is deeply rooted now to the common mwananchi, to the Wanjiku, which we have coined the tag now as a hustler from the crown who understands who is William Ruto compared to the person who is higher at the up. When we came to 2012, when we were making coalition between URB and TNA, this is whereby we had Musalia Mudavadi, who was also to be enjoined in this relationship between Mount Kenya and William Ruto. So what happened from there is that William Ruto was in pole position not to be of much credit to recontest with the son of Mount Kenya for presidency. And he relinquished his position to be a front flag bearer, to be a deputy. So this also cultivated another relationship in between us. And the way Mount Kenya sees William Ruto is a son, is a prodigal son, who happens to have been in another political wing before them. So when we made the third relationship between TNA and URB, William Ruto started now going inroads to Mount Kenya. And what was ailing mostly wananchi there was about industries. We have church activities, we have local schools, which normally they is under the members of parliament. So if we remove the fact that he was going for government projects, he still have some of his personal things which he did in Mount Kenya. But today we are seeing now a rebellion. That is after the collapse of the formation of Jubilee government. And this is where we might have, I might say that maybe we slipped or we hungered some of the kingpins there. That is during the Jubilee nomination. And some still believe that, or maybe I lost it because of William Ruto. We have one former governor, Kapogo, who is also a kingmaker in Mount Kenya, complaining. So we are now looking on how we can accommodate these people back and mend our relationship. That is the relationship between William Ruto and Mount Kenya. Because this Mount Kenya 14 block is very important for William to clinch presidency. Because these are people who have relationship compared to other Asala movement in other parts of the country who exist. So these ones, we see them as the main people, brothers, that we should hold hand.
As a consolidated block.
Yes, we should have an hand first before now going to the other one in the bush.
Can I ask a question? To what extent is Kiamba, post-election violence and the Kiamba issue, a barrier? To what extent? Because I was at a function where there was all kinds of discussions about 2022 and, who has done what. And at the end of the day, the one thing that came out with one of the local politicians is they said, do not forget Kiamba.
I think having now this by-election is in Kiamba is an accidental relationship between what happened in Kiamba in Eldoret. And some politicians have coined the breast that the people who are affected in Kiamba are the ones who are from this Kiamba today. But we believe that Kiamba name is just a relationship. The certainty that we now have Kiamba in Kiambu and we have Kiamba in Eldoret. But there is no relationship. It's only that now the political environment and the political competitors are just coining the word. Because initially, yes, we might accept that the founder of Kiamba might have migrated from Kiamba.
But does what happened there bear any kind of political significance to now what we are talking about now in terms of Deputy President wanting to then gain this camaraderie again with Central Kenya? Does what happened there bear any significance still today?
And even before you answer and link to that, Kiamba also has historical significance because it was also the site of some very strong anti-Mau Mau activity. And so he brought this whole thing in. So in the psyche of Mount Kenya, is that Kiamba narrative a factor?
Now, I will refuse to take this Kiamba as a factor. Main reason is the main culprits or the victims who understand what happens in Kiamba are the hustlers on the ground. There is a common mwananchi at the ground who knows that what happened in Kiamba was not initiated by this person, whom now the politicians are using it to coin and paraphrase it, that it links together. So those whom we have today in Kiamba, those who will be voting are the hustlers, are the common mwananchi, whom if he or she has a relative in Kiamba, knows what exactly happens. Other than the utterance that we put in quotes that the person who infiltrated what happened in Kiamba is this person. So there is some inner truth from the common man at the ground.
Or they might not know, but there is, like you say, the inner truth. What do they believe?
Yes, so
what do they hold happen? Because the dominant narrative has been linking Kiamba to the DP and or his people. That has been the facts didn't come out. Even ICC couldn't uncover the facts because witnesses disappeared and all of that. But there is what people believe.
In the court of public opinion.
Yes, in the
who's responsible for post-election violence in Rift Valley?
And is it still one of the underlying issues?
For the person who was not affected with the post-election violence, or who was not in Rift Valley, knows that because he or she has been breathed the gospel that the person who was responsible was DB. And he or she might have a fact to support it, because if you try to question, he or she can ask you, then why was he summoned to ICC? But now, at the mwananchi who was in Kiamba knows that this election violence was a spontaneous reaction from the people, which it affected those who were at the ground, perceived to have been alienated to the other side. Because today you might be shocked that in 2007 we had even councillors from Kiamba, a councillor from Kiamba who was in ODM. So there is no perceived history, even the results of Kiamba. There is nowhere which shows that the majority of Kiamba voters voted for PNU. So this was a spontaneous eruption that only attacked to the person because the people of Kiamba had relationship with the president, Biden Mwai Kibaki. So there was a narrative that, for me, since I am a Kalenjin, I must vote for William Ruto. So even if I'm in Ukambani and I voted for any other person, there is that tag that no, this belongs to such a political way because of the tribal name. But the person who at the crown knows that this was not the cause.
There's also maybe the possibility of what has happened since then in terms of the coming together of Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto and the campaigns, the joint campaigns that they conducted in these two regions. First in the North Rift and in the Mount Kenya region, and selling that whole message of, we have come together now. Let's see how we can move from that point going forward. The other narrative, and I want to raise this, is during this time of the second term of Uhuru Ruto, is the voter in Mount Kenya feeling that they are betraying the work that was done by William Ruto in campaigning for the Uhuru Ruto ticket when Ruto seems to be now being sidelined? Could that also be a factor? That's, because we have heard that many times. No. He did not abandon us. We cannot abandon him.
Now, from this narrative of being betrayed or not betrayed also still resonates with the person at the ground level. And we have those who are the public opinion that the only thing which it might make me today to vote for William Ruto is because he was with Uhuru. But to us, we are not seeing that as a sign of betrayal. Because if we take it as a sign of betrayal, it is like we are now making them that it is a compulsory for you to pay back us. But now we are not taking the issue of William Ruto supporting Uhuru Kenyatta in 2013 and 2017. We are seeing the relationship between William Ruto and the people of Mount Kenya, those who are at the grassroots, the relationship of William Ruto with the leaders of Mount Kenya. So this is what something which we are going to take it, not as a sign of you must pay us. The way our opponents are perpetrating it. That's why last time you hear another one saying, "Atuna 10." And even our deputy president came out telling us, I don't owe anybody. And indeed, there is no any debt that we have in Mount Kenya. The only thing that we are campaigning we are having a candidate who has a strong relationship with Mount Kenya.
Yegon, when you say we, who is we?
We now, I take this time as we the people who support William Ruto.
Okay.
It's
Yes,
good
yes.
to be clear on
Yes.
his position.
All right.
Yeah.
So now, you, the people who support William Ruto, now just looking at, because widespread, because we cannot run away from the reality that there are those who, they're supporters on both sides, or even all four sides, or however many sides that there are. Are you looking at it as an absolute importance or critical that the support from Central Kenya for William Ruto is grounded, is held onto in order for him to progress? Is it absolutely necessary to have that support from them, from Central Kenya?
Yes, do. Mount Kenya is an important voting block for William Ruto to be president. Today, from the statistics we have taken, is that for William Ruto to be president, we need around 80% support from Mount Kenya. The entire Mount Kenya, that is East and the upper part. But we don't have so much problem from Mount Kenya East, because I was in a burial somewhere in Embu, and you can still see now, no, we are still standing with your son. Though the other guys want to. And this comes from a common mwananchi. And even the politicians, if you see the politicians from Mount Kenya East, there is no one who is putting an acid test to William Ruto candidates. So the issue now is retaining this Mount Kenya, the central region. Let me put to the central region.
The home base.
The home base of President Kenyatta.
Yes, and then hustler narrative.
Now,
one is, how is the DP a hustler, and how is his hustler similar to Juakali? Because the DP's history as a hustler is a very privileged hustler with access to a lot of political power. When with Cyrus Jorongo, Youth for Kano?
Yep. 92.
You know? Yes, YK 92. How is he a hustler? And is he not exploiting the hustler who has been marginalized by the policies of the government that he was a part?
And now we have here, today we have an hustler movement, and we have UDA as party. So these are two different things. We have an hustler movement, that's an hustler narrative, and we have the party, UDA, though it has an identity which we use the wheelbarrow as a symbol for an hustler. Now, how William Ruto resonates with a common hustler, despite the fact that he's not an hustler, is because this person recognizes that the humble beginnings of a common person, right from the crown. He resonates from the people, those who are in Juakali industry, those who are in Mamamboga. And we have seen this before, that you can find William Ruto doing an impromptu visit of buying my Ndichoma from a mama around, and even buying the machines to the common person or a motorbike. So these things which he is distributing resonates with a common hustler, that person at the crown,
so
who wants to be empowered. So now he's coming here as an hustler ambassador.
Okay.
So when you are an ambassador, it doesn't mean that you have to be in that shoes, but you understand what you are.
How come he started understanding now?
No.
Even beyond that, maybe he understands, right? But then with the position that he has had, I can resonate with your position, and it's just we can resonate until the cows come. Let's just be resonating where we are.
Maybe.
But then in terms of in his position and with what he had in terms of the tools of power, what has he then been able to do to remove these individuals from this hustler position?
Is he exploiting those that are economically marginalized? Because under the bromance And you can say William Ruto has benefited from the bromance because that period, they campaigned together, he was exposed. He's seen as enabling Uhuru Kenyatta's ascension into power. We agree to that. But at that point when they were doing joint policies, what did he do for this hustler?
Maybe Wanjiru, you have started knowing William Ruto today. But I can take you back up to 2005. When William Ruto was in limelight as 10 Eldoret North MP. And we had a Katiba by NAC government, which it was not resonating to the Asala, to the common Mwananchi. If you ever read that draft of 205, it had a lot of amendments which it was not favoring the common person. And William Ruto was in the side, though he was in opposition, but still he manages to be in a part that was opposing to that Katiba, which it was disempowering and recognizing a common person. So the issue here today is, yes, we had the common policies which we were doing during when we were campaigning, and one of the policies we had the youth fund. Youth fund was an initiative to empower a common man at the crown. But the procedures of making this work or for a common person to benefit at the crown didn't work because of the policies and those who are in the ministry. So even before then, we cannot question that. Why now? He has been there before.
Yeah, but don't say opposing 2005. Don't mention Katiba with William Ruto because you're on shaky ground. He also opposed 2010 Katiba.
Yeah.
But
so he has a history of opposing Katiba. I don't even know what the ideological position was in opposing the Katiba. He opposed it.
Let's take a break.
So
we continue the conversation. Yegon, one of our listeners, is in the studio today. He's our guest host. We are talking about the hustler movement and whether the hustler movement can actually gain ground in the country, not just in the country. Let's start with Mount Kenya region. Some of the comments that are coming in on social media. Andy Njuguna says, Ruto will not get the whole block if Uhuru does not back him. So the Mount Kenya block is divided and will not be of help to any candidates. Evan says, SpiceFM, when you say Ruto, don't just think of Ruto as a name. Ruto is a symbol of the common Mwananchi, the hustler, the Mama Mboga, and every hustler out there. Let us not say Ruto is retaining Mount Kenya. Let's say hustlers are maintaining Mount Kenya. 28 minutes after 8, we are live on KTN Home. We are also on SpiceFM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, in addition to being on radio, SpiceFM around the country. Good morning. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. "24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Kubash Hood Edition is here, and we are all about the youth. They are young, energetic, ambitious, and they are the future. Kubash Hood Edition is all about creating brighter futures for young people, empowering them from issues mental health, peer pressure, innovation, and even parenting. Our show gives young people the practical and insightful support they need. From different segments from dance battles, shout-outs, Artist of the Week, to even Gava Corner. Kubash Hood Edition. We help them in building their confidence and motivation so they can continue to dream big. Kubash Hood Edition. Coming to a hood near you. Live on KTN Home every Saturday, 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m.
There are so many people peddling what is false and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done
in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. You know, they gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now, if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
He's a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort. Nafandi hii umbo yako iko na
nini umba special.
The weather
Cloudy
with
Nairobi at
Spice
15,
FM.
highs of 24, lows of 12 today. Light rain in certain parts of Nyeri at 14, highs of 22, lows of 12. We'll see lows of 14 and mostly cloudy conditions in Nakuru today, currently at 15. It's 16 degrees and sunny in Eldoret, highs of 22, 29 the high and mostly sunny in Kisumu. It's 19 and sunny in Kakamega, highs of 28 and lows of 14. 29 will be the high in Mombasa today, where it's still raining at 23. It's now raining in Malindi at 26, highs of 28, lows of 25. 26 will be the high in Kampala. It's mostly cloudy at 20. Mostly sunny conditions at 22 in Dar es Salaam, highs of 30 and lows of 21. Joburg is sunny. It's still chilly though at 4, highs of 20 today. Light rain in Lagos continues at 25, highs of 30. And we'll see highs of 31 in Kinshasa, where it's sunny at 21. That'll be the low for today.
Spice FM, Nakuru.
Okay, turning off into South Sea, a little bit of a hold up there, coming off of Mombasa Road. It continues to move along slowly as you get towards the Nyeri Stadium roundabout, but nothing too crazy today, and I think that's good. The bypasses are, helping a lot of folks out this morning, so please use those as well. So that issue going towards Thika Road now has been sorted. That's outbound. Inbound, Kiamba Road is connecting at Muthaiga Square, and it slows things down some. But not crazy traffic today, which is good. Let's see if it does get any crazier. Let us know on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
27 minutes to 9. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. In the room is Eric Latif, Nduoko, Wanjiru Gikonyo, and Yegon, one of our listeners who is a medical professional and who's in the studio, and he says he's a self-declared hustler, supporter of William Ruto. We are talking the William Ruto factor in Mount Kenya and then the William Ruto factor in the 2022 general election. So you're saying that Ruto had started building his base and positioning himself as somebody who is championing for the common man. So now when we see him championing for the common man today, we shouldn't be questioning, but where have you come from? So let's talk about in that period, 2013 to 2017, where even he says that he was actively involved in governing the country. Did we see policies and programs rolled out by the government that we could say the hustler benefited from? And can we count them?
Thank you, Eric. Between 2013 to 2017, William Ruto was the chief. He was in the chief docket of delivery for the Jubilee government. That is, he was the one overseeing the government projects. And from this, we can see the project like for the last mile connectivity. That is under rural electrification. The most people who benefited from that last mile connectivity were people from the humble background. Most houses that were connected were the people who are in Mashinani who had been forgotten. Number two, if you see the infrastructure, for example, for roads, there are some sites whom they could not access tarmac roads because they were in rural remotes. But during this tenure, the Jubilee government, under the leadership of now Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto as the chief in delivery. We oversee many projects, many tarmac roads going towards the rural areas in the setup that is in Mount Kenya. In fact, all of we cannot say Mount Kenya alone. We can say all over the country before being taken charge by another person.
But you're gone.
But they've continued.
Yeah.
But the question is, the ones that directly benefit. You see, right now, during this campaign, the Deputy President is calling and meeting up with the hustlers and talking several things. He started by, first of all, showing hustler direct empowerment. All right? So you're doing small business. I'm going to empower you. I'm going to give you the wheelbarrow to carry your fruits and vegetables. I'm going to give you the sewing machine. I'm starting you up. During that time when he had direct control of the delivery of government, what did he do? Can we say that there was increased access to finance for small business people? Can we say that there was increased access to market for small-scale farmers? Can we say that there was increased access for the youth to get into small businesses, into agriculture? Can we say that agriculture received financing to help it develop?
And let me even add to that question. For instance, when Ngilu was health minister, Ngilu came out and said it didn't work then, but said universal health.
Yep.
And it was the policy that she was willing to, it marked her tenure there because she had ascended to a position of power and she had a rallying call. So you can say she had the heart of the majority to have access. What has William Ruto done when he has had access to power? Because, for instance, those roads you're talking about, many tarmac roads and all, that is county government. Just because the Jubilee came in at a time of devolution. Major roads are the responsibility of the national government. The county level roads and those ones that go up to the village, that is county government. So that one, if they happened under the tenure of Jubilee, is not the track record of either Uhuru Kenyatta or the Deputy President. So what is it that has marked his time, even in opposition or in government, for the hustler?
Now, back to you, Wanjiro and Eric Ladif. You know, today we are trying to separate William Ruto, who was in government, actively in government between 2013 to 2017. When these people were intact and working hand in hand, consoling each other. So the policies which was running on from 2013 to 2017 were policies which it was made by these two people when they were assuming power, when they were campaigning. So the part of this universal health care we are talking today, the part of creating
the Big Four agenda.
Yes, the Big Four came just the other day. Creating the funds, like we had the Women Fund, we have the Youth Fund. So these structures were put in place by the people who were in the same government. And they were working together to deliver those promises to the common man for the sake of re-election in 2017.
Okay, Youth Fund was there before. It started during the Kibaki time. The Uhuruto time came with the Uwezo Fund, which is what they were saying. If you guys vote overwhelmingly for us in the first round, the money that could have been spent going to second round election, we're going to put it into this fund. Uwezo Fund was born. Now, give me the benefits of Uwezo Fund to the hustler, those 5 years.
Now, during these 5 years, a lot of procedural ways of getting the Uwezo Fund came out with difficulties. In fact, the common man, the hustlers were being asked to form some groups and to form circles, which at the end of the day, they were being fed. So the allocation of the money during that time was not enough. That is why out of maybe 30 groups who have applied for Uwezo Fund or Youth Fund, you could find that 10 groups were going to get the allocation. But these were rotational, because if there's a certain group gets during this financial year, the other financial year, they were going to receive it. So these things were involved. William Ruto was being involved. There's no way you can separate that from him.
Now, if you can't separate, these 5 years have seen the worst corruption in those very projects you said. Infrastructure, those, especially the infrastructure docket, national infrastructure. levels of corruption never seen before. We are in a debt crisis because of the policies of those 5 years. So actually, William Ruto, together with Uhuru Kenyatta, have committed economic crimes against the people of Kenya because today we can't afford to hire police, we were saying. We can't afford to transfer money to the counties.
Even the universal health care, I'm just going to even stick on that. The universal health care that we are talking about, whether, a part of the agenda, something that came up before, we saw it today. 1 billion shillings cannot be accounted for. Just one example, from one ministry, 1 billion shillings cannot be accounted for. These are policies. So when you share the success, they say, you also share the failure.
Because if he was part of delivery,
but
he was in charge of delivery. Was he also in charge of the corruption?
There's some people within government that stand out for doing a certain thing in a certain way. And here we are. I mean, this is a serious thing. And it doesn't matter who it is. And I will ask the same question of anybody who comes out and say they want to be president of a country. What is it that you have been able to do that will now give the impetus to anybody who is going to vote to say, I can see what you have done, and based on this, I want to give you another chance to do even better. And that is my question. What is it that has been done? Clearly, and even if it's just one.
Today in Duo, today, yes, during 2013 to 2017, Jubilee government, we have a lot of cases of corruption. But today, those cases are still in the court. And the law doesn't allow the president to prosecute the perpetrators. We have seen the hard work of the president, even increasing the money to the EACC, increasing the funding to the DCI. But the end result still lies to the courts. So today we cannot blame...
You can't blame the courts for corruption. The corruption took place. So the point is, the courts that are underfunded by the Jubilee government, the police that is not able to generate evidence, those are problems. But the corruption took place. The borrowing to fund corruption took place. We are paying today. So we are talking about this 5-year period when Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto mismanaged the economy, promoted a lot of corruption. Their lieutenants that were put in Ministry of Finance fleeced the Treasury. So how can he separate himself from that?
From here, we can look at what is the role of the deputy president in power. He has no hand in making sure that so and so can be prosecuted. He can have a say or advise the president on what to do.
But you told us he was in charge of delivery.
Yes, when you are in charge of delivery, it is like today when I ask you to deliver this phone to Eric Latif. So obviously, or you will make sure that it will be delivered. But the process of delivery doesn't lie under his docket. There were some ministries and the procedures and even the protocol, even the procurement or procuring those infrastructure that later came in with a lot of big losses. But at the end of it all, yes, we saw the project. The projects were completed. Some are under...
Many white elephants.
Yes, but it was completed. But inside it, we still have the issue of inflated price or the corruption.
Outright corruption.
Yes. So this person was in charge of just to deliver, make sure, oversee, is the work going on, not how much has been spent. Because right now, today...
Now you've demoted him from head of delivery to head of overseeing.
Overseeing and delivery is just
You know, Yegon, as we have this conversation, we are obviously cognizant of the fact that you do not speak for William Ruto.
Yes.
You are not in the William Ruto campaign. You're not in the deputy presidency. You are a hustler and a supporter of William Ruto. So the questions that we are asking are, of the supporters of William Ruto, what is it that you say, you know what, I will vote for this person, I will die with this person. Wherever he goes, I will be standing there with him, okay? So we are not basically putting you on the spot and saying, no, but what did... We're having a conversation among voters, amongst voters. Now, as a hustler, as the person who sees and has understood, this is what William Ruto represents. This is what William Ruto is proposing to do if given the overall authority of being president, chief executive, and head of state of the country. What is it that you see he's going to be able to do different from what he has been able to do as cabinet minister, rising to deputy president, and now when he has the sword, what is it that he's going to do different?
That is the wrong question, Eric. And it's the question we keep asking of our leaders. What will they do different? Our leaders have shown us they do exactly what they do. They don't do different. We asked what will Uhuru Kenyatta do different from the person who he was. Uhuru Kenyatta has come and he's exactly the person who he was. People asked, what will Sonko do different? Sonko came and did jeshi yake aliingiza into the... So the better record, the better question to hustlers is what has William Ruto done and what are you expecting him to do based on that? Because if Kibuda,
the past 15 minutes, Wanjiru, just to cut you short, because it's my question. The first 15 minutes we were asking, what has William Ruto done? And the hustler has been trying to respond to us what he has seen William Ruto do. Now, the question that I'm asking is, now that you're saying, there are these things that he was able to do, but then there was a tag. He was just a minister. He was only a deputy president. How different do you expect him to be when he becomes president?
That's a better.
Now, for me as an hustler and a supporter of William Ruto, I see William Ruto when he was agriculture minister, what he did. And during that time, when he was the Minister of Agriculture, though we had the maize scandal.
How come these scandals tend to follow William Ruto? He's so unfortunate.
So
wherever he goes.
Even though we had an issue of maize scandal, we can say that the prices of fertilizer was fair to the mwananchi. The price of getting seeds were fair to mwananchi. The overall prices of agriculture commodities, even our polytechnics being equipped, not the actual polytechnics, these agricultural polytechnics like Kapete, Nyahururu, they were equipped during the time of William Ruto, and two were added. So we have seen that he was now in charge of a docket which he has to prove, and the policies belongs to him and the government. But he was the one to implement it. Secondly, when he came to Ministry of Higher Education, he lowered the chap entry from 67 points to around 49. It was not just today like Siblas. And we added more campuses. Even though at the end of the day, the award went to the then immediate now Minister Sale Koske. But the work which was done in the Ministry of Higher Education was the work of William Ruto.
He also introduced the focus on STEM sciences.
Yes.
Reduced funding for arts.
Yes, because normally...
Reduced funding for arts. And this is maybe, it was a government policy at the time, but one of the issues we have with the education system, because it's important to focus on sciences, is the focus on the arts was removed. The focus on technical was on paper but was not resourced. So he was pursuing a very elitist line, because when you're focusing on sciences, you're actually saying formal education, engineers, doctors, scientists, those are the people who will drive the country. He didn't focus on the common mwananchi. And he didn't focus also on a majority of people who go into the arts.
But now, who is the beneficiary of inventions of the science part? It is the common person. Everything for manufacturing, industrialization, that the person who will benefit most was the common person. There was no need for us to have arts, because currently we don't need a revolution.
Now, good. Those are the words, by the way, of William Ruto at the time. Because he said there are some degree courses, sociology, anthropology. These are a waste of time.
If you see at the first world countries, the developed countries like China, Germany, they have invested in sciences.
But they invest.
We are no longer in now the agrarian revolution to invest more on arts.
I think that's an academic conversation that can be had by
is
various
it academic,
people. By
or
various
is it
people.
the philosophy?
No. Yes, the same. We can have a whole show on the importance of investing on both. He also introduced a lot of focus and push towards TVETs, which is what now has also been carried over into TVETs. Let me come back to my question, because I'd like it answered. show me or illustrate to me a difference when if William Ruto is called Your Excellency President William Ruto, CGH. How is it that you and the fellow hustlers are seeing that this country is going to look this way because William Ruto will have the reins of power?
The hustler movement and the hustlers are gaining the narrative, the policy of William Ruto that now we have to start from the bottom-up economic approach. And this is the person now we can trust that if he's given this power, because this is his own policy that he wants to implement. This is like now implementing a Big Four agenda. So the policy now is a bottom-up economic approach.
And it is only when he becomes president that he can do this.
Yes.
Because the question is, Yegon, truth be told, that if it is truly, and it's possible, that a policy may have just come up, you've thought about it and said, okay, this is actually what can actually help the nation. But the question for me remains, when you had this much power, when you had this much influence, when you had this position, why then was this not introduced? Or are we waiting for the time when you will be given now those instruments of power that will now say, okay, let's deal in an economy that has a bottom-up approach? Why not?
Can I also
why
add
has
to
this
that?
not started before?
Because our constitution gives us a bottom-up approach. It's called devolution. When URP was campaigning, they were the devolution arm of Jubilee.
Yes.
They were the champions. When they got in, they fought devolution from the word go. Why? There was a political competition between the Rutos, the COG head and William Ruto. So because of this political fighting, counties were starved of money, resources. Even in Parliament, Murkomen, who is a brilliant lawyer, and also a champion of devolution, he became a stumbling block to devolution. So I put it to you that William Ruto's interest in politics is stronger than his commitment to bottom-up development.
No.
Because when he had the chance, he was a barrier to the implementation, to the transfer of money and to strengthening that bottom-up approach.
Today, I can say that William Ruto was never a barrier. Because according to me, if you compare the position of deputy president right now and that of vice president before, I still believe that the position of vice president was powerful. Reason is this. Vice president had a ministry to run off, like the Ministry of Home Affairs. And he was also the personal assistant to the president. So he used to do work assigned by the president, and on the back end, he has a role to play. Today, the position of the deputy president relies on the wishes of the president himself.
Even in Parliament,
so are you saying that
even with his
that
political...
that has not then allowed him to do the things that we are saying he should have done?
Allow me to finish something. You were asking me now, why did this person did not implement the bottom-up approach?
Why did he prevent, not implement? Why did he become a barrier in the Senate, which is supposed to protect devolution? They were in charge of the devolution committee. And in that position, actually, Jubilee senators had to stand up against the chair of the devolution committee to refuse some of the amendments that would have weakened devolution. Why did URP betray the cause of devolution when they got to the House?
Now, there was if you can remember history between 2013 to 2014, the money dispersed to the counties was dispersed at the right time. And there were no shortage. But what happened to the governors? The governors could not account for the money which they were being dispersed to the county level. Now, when the Auditor General came up with the report in 2015, the county governments could not account for the lost money. So the governments the national government now was like, how can be with dispersing funds which the county government cannot articulate or they cannot relay what they did with it. So that is why now at the Senate there were amendments passed by Murkomen so that we can cap. In fact, some of the amendments was to allow even the governors to be the signatory of the finance being default to the county level, and they were refusing. They were saying that this is not the work. So if today we can say why did the barrier existed, it's because of the counter checking. You cannot be sending some resources which it cannot be accounted for.
It was about accountability.
It was about accountability.
Taking a break now on KTN Home, 5 minutes to 9 o'clock. We have with us in the studio one of our listeners, Yegon, who is a hustler and is a supporter of Deputy President William Ruto's presidential bid next year. He's been telling us why he thinks Ruto has a chance and why he thinks that Ruto then should also be supported by his fellow hustlers. Time for us to take that break. And as we take this break, Yegon is also a medical professional. You are a medical lab technologist.
Yes.
So when we come for tests, when we send to the lab for blood tests and all, we find people like you. Now, about malaria and malaria testing. When somebody feels malaria, and then they're sent to, you go to a health facility, is it also possible to get these testing kits for malaria in other areas? Can I just buy one for myself and keep it home?
Should I answer?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, malaria in Kenya has been sponsored by the US government for some time under the US aid. That is from the prevention, that is the use of mosquito nets, and up to the testing area and training of the professionals. Now, currently, the most best way of testing malaria is what we call quantitative testing, that is in microscopy. Before then, we used to report just when you have malaria, we say you have malaria, we say positive or negative. Then we graduated where by now we could count the parasites per field. Now today we are counting specific parasites as by white blood cell volume. So the government under the sponsorship of US government had introduced some test kits, which we call it strip. So these were available at the dispensary level. The main reason was because sometimes you are being, the most common affected age is the children who are under 5 years old. And at the dispensary level, most county governments have not employed the medical lab techs for testing. So these kits were being produced so that it is easy to use, easy to use, so that the nurses who are not trained on how to test malaria could use these testing kits because it was easy to interpret. You just put your blood sample, it reads either negative or positive, just like HIV/AIDS, the way we read the HIV testing.
Right. We'll have more conversations on testing malaria and understanding the testing for malaria and also understanding how to get the proper diagnosis once you get malaria. Time for that break on KTN Home, but you can switch on to SpiceFM wherever you are around the country, or SpiceFM KE, where we are live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive, and of course, SpiceFM KE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
The Spice Drive with Monique. The official soundtrack of getting you where you need to be.
Even when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us, assert our will.
When the legislators are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality. We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi Lokop is Jeshi Lawokov?
I can't say it very well. No, you need to Jeshi Lokop.
And everyone knows. Okay.
This is the Situation Room the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Good morning. This is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. The appeals court is set to listen to 82 respondents in the BBI case, among them Martha Karua, John Haminwa and Elisha Ongaya, who will take the stand to respond to the appeals by President Uhuru Kenyatta, ODM leader Raila Odinga and IBC. Uhuru, Raila and IBC's lawyers will also close their BBI case by responding to some of the issues raised by their opponents. The government is set to invest $1 million annually on gender-based violence research and innovation to boost evidence-based programming by 2026. President Uhuru Kenyatta, during his visit in France, also says will establish a gender-based violence survivors fund as an economic requirement for all GBV victims.
We will introduce a module on GBV in the 2022 Kenya Demographic Health Survey to strengthen the utilization of gender statistics and informing the design and scale-up as well as evaluation of FGM and gender-based violence programming. As well, we will commit to developing gender-based violence management and information system to strengthen gender-based violence prevention and response programming.
KANU Chairman Gideon Moi has urged Kiamba voters to rally behind Jubilee candidate Kariri Njama in the by-election slated for the 15th of this month. Senator Moi says voting for Njama will enable the residents enjoy the fulfillment of the ruling party's development agenda in the area. Senator Moi also urged Kiamba MCAs to continue supporting President Uhuru's development agenda.
We will support our candidate, the Jubilee candidate here, and we've all resolved that we'll do our utmost to ensure that we have a successful outcome to it, and we are very confident that the people will deliver a favorable verdict.
NART offices have been indefinitely closed by auctioneers due to a debt exceeding 1.4 million shillings owed to a former employer. NART Deputy Secretary General Hesbon Otieno says reduced monthly union dues has affected their ability to pay numerous debts.
Kama chama tutajipanga. Tumekuwa tukipitia changamoto ambazo zinajulikana, na sasa kwa sababu tuna ofisi mpya tunaweza kuenda na kupitia rekodi zote ya madeni ambayo tuko nayo, hata ya wafanyikazi ama matawi yetu, alafu kisha tutalipa. Lakini leo imekuwa ni vibaya sana kwa sababu wafanyikazi walikuwa ofisini. Ikifika Jumatatu, kama tunaweza kuwa tumesuluhisha na hivi vitu ambavyo vimechukuliwa na auctioneers virudishwe ili tuweze kuendelea kupatiana huduma kama kawaida.
And finally, police in Machakos County have launched a manhunt for 3 suspects who deceive private car drivers that their vehicles are damaged and then rob them of metal and replace them with old ones while demanding for large sums of money for repairs. Area Chief Joshua Kimeu says the men were collaborating with a mechanic working in Grogon on Machakos Kitui Road where they were deceiving drivers. That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, so we're still seeing a little bit of Mombasa Road today. I know we're moving out into the city centre and it's clogged up just a little bit right around that junction as you're trying to then connect to the Langata Road going out then towards Bagathi Way. There's an option for you also getting into the city without too much of an issue. Coming out of Westlands, there's still that right around James Gishoro, that junction. But the Red Hill Link Road is all right getting into the city as well. Longer route, but you won't get stuck on what is now the mess of Uhuru Highway with all the construction. It's not too crazy a Friday, and we'd like to keep it just such. Use the bypasses. They're really helping out this morning. The southern bypass, the eastern bypass. We saw a little bit of an issue right around Donholm earlier. It shouldn't be too bad as we go along. Jogo Road also, looking far back as Hamza. It's a bit slow, but it shouldn't be too crazy moving forward. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. That's how you can get in touch. Text 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your
5
day.
minutes after 9, Kenya's biggest conversation continues into the fourth hour. You have Nduoko, Eric Latif, Wanjiru Gikonyo, and Yegon. As we begin the hour, today's proverb: atakaye kufuga ng'ombe aanze na kuku. Atakaye kufuga ng'ombe aanze na kuku. One who wants to rear cattle should start with chicken. Wanjiru, let's talk about the debt situation in the country and the relationship between the country and the multilateral lenders, specifically the World Bank.
Right. Thanks. For the opportunity to bring this conversation to the fore. This week, as the Okoa Uchumi Coalition, which is a civil society coalition focusing on debt and pushing for accountability in public debt, we wrote a letter to the World Bank. And our complaint to the World, first, is to appreciate the support the World Bank gives the country, because we need that support to be able to undertake our development. In fact, looking at the figures, between 2014 and 2018, out of a development budget of about 2 trillion, which is the national development budget, the World Bank supported about 400 billion of it. So they are very significant. About 1/5 of Kenya's development budget is supported by the World Bank through loans. And the bank then does this through what is called the County Partnership Framework. The County Partnership Framework is where they agree on the projects and they agree this is how we'll implement them and monitor them and all of that. This is also guided by rules that govern the World Bank, including rules on governance, transparency, participation. However, and the reason we wrote the letter to the World Bank, the global head, regional head, Kenya head, is to say that they are not abiding by their rules in Kenya, because the County Partnership Framework has become a closed affair between the World Bank and Treasury. And this document is then not being monitored, not monitored by civil society, not monitored by parliament, and the public participation that's supposed to take place is not taking place. And part of the reason for this, from where we sit, is what we were discussing during the week, that when the Jubilee administration came in, they refused to sign the external partnership agreements, the bilateral agreements with different countries, until the citizen component was pulled out. So this government has shown itself to be inimical to public participation, sharing information, and then we've seen in the same stroke huge corruption in infrastructure projects that are being implemented contrary to the constitutional dictates on Article 201. All public finance matters must have public participation, accountability, and transparency. So the government is violating this. And then when the World Bank comes to work with the government, they are operating in an approach that also violates the constitutional requirements and the World Bank's own requirements. So we wrote a letter just saying, no, this isn't on. This is our observation after reviewing all your records and your reports. This is what we find to be the situation. Yes.
So what we are saying here is that the World Bank has its own internal mechanisms that call for engagement with the citizens of a country where it's lending.
Citizens and civil society.
And civil society. And have we seen this happen in other countries?
we've seen it happen in other countries. So our study demonstrated that in Ghana, for instance, we had much more robust, the county partnership framework was actually popularized. So there were meetings with the citizens to say, this is what we are going to do. And we had several other examples where we saw a much higher level of participation. Here we found that the participation of the World Bank is limited to consultation. So during the development of the the county diagnostic report, civil society were invited. Usually those invites are based on like 2-3 days notice. There's a bank meeting, you go, you give your views, the report is then produced. That is, properly speaking, not proper participation. But in the county planning partnership framework, the previous one, because there are 5 years and then now we are developing the next one, we said that in the previous one, there was no public participation, there was no citizen engagement and civil society oversight over that. What is the fate of the present one? And we didn't get a response. We wrote a couple of letters last year, no response. So this year we decided, let us do our own review.
Okay.
Let us do consultations. Let us meet with civil society and ask them, we are finding there is no participation. Maybe
it occurred?
Maybe it occurred.
Yes.
And people, sure enough, had the same experience. So the World Bank has taken cue from governments. Because we know our government right now, there is an ongoing case. The BBI case is about following the law. And this government refusing to follow the law, refusing to obey, even contempt, being in contempt from rulings of the courts. So the World Bank, instead of coming to enforce its standards, as it traditionally would, has come and lowered its standard and been co-opted. Actually, we are very concerned that the World Bank and the IMF have been co-opted by government and are actually colluding against the people of Kenya. Why? We must say World Bank projects are better managed when we are presently looking at the debt register, and we find the performance of their projects is higher than the ones that are maybe supported by commercial debt and some of the bilateral ones. But mostly the commercial debt are the bigger problem. But even having said that, there is a lack of participation. Further, our last concern is the legacy projects. And we put this to the IMF during several meetings we've had to them, and now we are formulating a letter to them where we say these legacy projects are very expensive. Some of them have been inflated. That the return of investment is not there. Even Parliament has said this. Yet you come and continue lending to a country that is mismanaging major resources and taxing Kenyans to pay for corruption.
Yeah.
So the World Bank's own spending might be scrutinized, but they also lend a lot of technical support. They go beyond that. So we are saying, to the extent that you don't identify the gaps, you are colluding.
You're colluding with the government,
a corrupt government, to defraud Kenyans.
Let's contextualize this from the African perspective and bring in two people who will help us with this conversation. One of them is Jason Braganza. He is the Executive Director of the African Forum and Network on Debt and Development. And the other one is Julius Kapwepwe. He is the Director of Programs, Uganda Development Network, and Coordinator of the East Africa Budget Network. Good morning to you, Jason and Julius.
Good morning. Good morning.
So we are able to have a video connection with Jason, but not so fortunate with Julius. Technology issues. Let me start with you, Jason. From the perspective of the African Forum and Network on Debt and Development, what is it that this institution does, and how does it come into the conversation around the multilateral lending institutions such as the World Bank and IMF and governments?
Thank you very much, and for having us on this program. Maybe for ease of the mouthful of our name, you can just refer to us as AfroDad. It might be easier for the listeners as well. So we are a Pan-African civil society organization that was established 25 years ago with the mandate of enhancing public participation and scrutiny on public debt issues. And our work then evolved over these past 2.5 decades to look at the broader financing aspects of our continent's development agenda. And within that context, a big component of it has relied on external financing, which comes from the multilaterals, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank Group. So in the context of our conversation today specifically, building up on what Wanjiru has said, it's also important to understand how the World Bank is organized. It has several layers within it. There's the World Bank, and then there's the World Bank Group. The World Bank is the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the International Development Assistance, which is usually the part of the bank that does the concessional lending, granting, and project implementation. And then you've got the World Bank Group, where you include the International Center for Settlements and Disputes and the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency and the International Finance Corporation. And these three other arms are the ones that normally deal with the private sector, big mega infrastructure, the legacy projects financing that Wanjiru has spoken about. And I think when you bring the two together as the entire group, this is where you start seeing the gray areas. And this has been, something that has been a challenge, not just in Kenya, but across the continent. And in particular, when I was last on the show, we talked about the evolution of the type of financing that has been coming into the continent from the relatively cheap concessional financing that used to be the norm in the form of official development assistance and the grants from the World Bank, to now a heavier reliance or dependence on leveraging private finance, which brings in with itself all manner of complications and opportunities for opaqueness in how arrangements and agreements are discussed, negotiated, and implemented. And we're seeing a lot of this, particularly in the energy sector, in the infrastructure sector. The World Bank specifically, in Kenya, I think you'll remember the issues we've had with wind energy projects up in north part of Kenya in Turkana, the issues we had just outside of Nairobi on Gong Hills, with regard to the financing and the public consultation that was meant to have taken place, the environmental screenings and evaluations that were meant to have been done ahead of implementing these projects. So it is something that is systemic. It is a big challenge for civil society organizations to actually get these spaces and to have a conversation with the development partners. So this is something that has been going on for very many decades, and it is something that we've been continuously pushing and advocating for reform at the highest level of these multilateral institutions, especially the ones that are taking a big chunk of financing into our countries.
And Julius, in Uganda, is it the same? Is this also happening in Uganda in terms of the relationship between the World Bank, the government, and the citizens through various organs of citizens, let's say the civil society organizations or even direct citizen participation? Is there any form of citizen engagement before the World Bank rolls out a program or during implementation of a program?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'll answer that, but in a given context. And right away, I'll say that as Uganda Debt Network, as East African Budget Network, we are conceptually not against borrowing, but rather we are for responsible borrowing and lending. In other words, it's not just an affair of a given government, say in Africa or in the low-income countries, but rather also about the going zone onto the loan giver. That's the context of where we are coming from. The other bit for me, quickly, to answer your question slightly later on, is that the World Bank Group, as Julie has highlighted earlier on, we acknowledge a massive contribution. If you looked at Uganda as a case, we have been with the World Bank predating Uganda's independence in 1962. we also know that for a fact, Kenya, you have been with the World Bank predating 1964, certainly before your independence. You were already with a begging bow to the World Bank. So was Uganda and a number of other countries in East Africa, remembering East African harbors and the railways, which were being used to take resources from the hinterland of Eastern Africa to the Yorkshire for cotton in London and others. But it was you and I, our forefathers and mothers, that paid for that facility. So you can imagine the level of relationship at that time. So again, quickly on the participation, if I look at the case of Uganda, and quick at speed, looking at what is called diagnostic country assessment, where the World Bank comes and invites certain stakeholders for a discussion into what they would wish to see for a new country program, in this case, across East Africa from the year 2021 to 26. The challenge or the shortfall thereof is that the selection of who participates, in addition to what Julia has said on the 3 days notice or one, is that there is a kind of a random selection of who comes aboard. There is limited acceptance or taking up of new ideas that come into that kind of discussion. There's like a preset kind of goal or mindset for that matter. And unless you speak to what is within the confinement, the degree of receptibility becomes very, very limited. And subsequently, that means that wouldn't be participation. You'd call it, if I could just speak any word, maybe pseudo-English, could be kind of aspiration. You are facilitated to think this direction, don't think the other independent one. That definitely becomes.
So you're saying essentially that there is an outcome that is already predetermined of this participation. To say that there are certain boxes that have already been created for this participation, and anybody who then is being called is going to fit into those boxes, and then we will be able to tick and say participation has taken place, but they've already been predetermined and prescribed.
Moreover, in a very short space of time, and outside that, then you might appear to be a bad boy or a bad girl, as the case may be. So what we are talking about really is to highlight the core and the cause for responsible borrowing and lending. You know, that's where we would be coming from, and that's what we are talking about this morning. There have been some level of space, but please, beyond, for instance, publish what you pay, because that's what the World Bank, for instance, Vice President Hafez Guranen will tell you that we do publish what you pay, and so what are you talking about, lack of information and participation? But we would wish to see a greater call to publicize what you fund. Many of us in Kiamba, many of us in Kajiado, and a number of areas across Kenya and Eastern Africa generally, Kivu area, south of Rwanda and Congo, in Rwenzori, in the case of Uganda, do not have access to the websites of the mighty. So publicize what you find, beyond just publish. Otherwise, you'd be told, no, this was on the website, we called people to come and make their input. But publicize, and also, and more so, where the particular projects are going to take place. Let the intended recipients be part of that discussion as conceptualization. When you don't do that, you find a big borehole has been constructed, but it has actually dodged the water point. A big water tank for cattle water provision and all that, like in the arid areas in Turkana and Karamoja areas, have been built. But because there was no local consultation with Thomas of that particular place, the exact water point where the water passes when it has rained is actually bypassed. So you'll find what the World Bank itself has called the white elephant for so much money that has been sunk in, and it is you, the taxpayers, the indigenous, not the government, but the government is playing a custodial role. It is you, the indigenous, the wananchi, who have to pay back that money. In Uganda, we've had cases where we've paid loans that were left here by the previous regime. so has been in Kenya.
Jason, just looking at still on that public participation issue and seeing at some of the things that we see come about when these decisions are made, what are the far-reaching effects of proper, authentic public participation? Not these boxes that we are talking about that are pre-filled and prescribed. What are the benefits of public participation, and what are some things that you can actually avoid if you had proper public participation? And if we're looking at something, for some people with the World Bank, it seems such a big, amorphous, entity. We're not really sure how it happens, and we're just going to leave those discussions for government. Public participation of the citizenry, how does it affect these big financial decisions and agreements that are being made?
I think at the most basic level, but also at the most important level, is when you have proper, genuine public participation, you actually know what people want. And I'll illustrate this with an example. At Afrodat, we are just in the process of commissioning a set of documentaries called Voices of the Indebted, which involves speaking to citizens across the continent and asking them what does it mean for them to be when they hear about debt issues in their countries. And one respondent just said, from Kenya, said they live in Kibera and just mentioned the infrastructure projects. And he just said, well, if in my opinion, I don't think financing the expressway should be a priority for the government right now, when in the midst of a pandemic, people are going hungry, children are not being able to attend school, and there's no functioning, proper universal access, functioning health system. And this puts into context what that means. If government and its development partners like the World Bank took time to sit down and actually listen to what citizens want, perhaps then they'll get a better understanding, a better flavor for what the needs are of citizens, and then decide how to then invest the billions of dollars that are being put in. And I want to echo that, this is not about saying that the investments that are being made are not good or they're not needed. The question is, are they the most pressing item that the country should be investing in at a particular moment in time? And I think when you don't do public participation in the correct way, you do end up with these white elephant projects, which, in the immediate to medium term do not serve any real purpose for majority of citizens, and actually end up costing the citizens even more than the benefit, because most of these projects, particularly the big legacy projects, are financed through debt. So I think that's at the very fundamental level, that is the importance of public participation. The second point is about the social contract that exists between the citizen and the state. It is a disturbing trend that this social contract is being violated by external third parties, where governments feel that they do not need to be held to account, or do not feel the need to be accountable to citizens, but instead feel greater need to be accountable to their development partners. And I think when you start removing the ability and capability of the public and civil society to participate and offer alternative views and alternative perspectives, there is an erosion of that social contract, which then can disenfranchise society, it can disenfranchise citizens, and what you end up with is a potential social crisis where people have very little trust, very little faith in what their governments are doing, and there's a sense of hopelessness that can be arrived at by the general public, and it can also lead to unrest. We've seen this with the Arab Spring. We've seen this in Sudan, just up the road. When you isolate people from expressing their views and expressing their thoughts, that feeling of disenfranchisement and the erosion of the social contract can be quite devastating.
There's an advert that comes to mind that has a tagline of acting local, thinking global. And I think a lot of us don't, the average Kenyan thinks of their local circumstance. But I think we need to increasingly become aware how much of what we do locally is being determined by people who are sitting globally. So in the case, and the perfect case is the World Bank coming in, having discussions with government. We are not privy to that. Parliament isn't privy to that. Our parliament isn't strong on oversight. What are the interests of the bank that we should be mapping as civil society if we want to try and really take forward this bottom-up agenda? Because who do we need to convince? Since we have a constitution, they have their rules and laws, that they're then actually, like you said, they're violating their third parties violating our social contract despite their own rules. So who do we have to talk to? Jason, in your view?
So we have, the bank has its own mechanisms where, we can channel these concerns. For me, that's one avenue. I think increasingly also is to use creative and disruptive, positively disruptive other mechanisms, like using the legal system to challenge some of these activities or some of these behavioral norms that many of our development partners and governments are perpetuating. So I think Wanjiru, you mentioned the BBI. I think that's a very good example of where people felt that there was a challenge potentially to the rights of Kenyan citizens to be part of this process in terms of how it was going to go forward. We've seen this with other civil society organizations that have successfully brought public interest litigation to the courts. I think in Kenya, in particular, there's a good moment right now with the judiciary where there seems to be some progressiveness to a degree and some level of braveness in tackling some of these issues and trying to hold the government to account in one way or another. For me, this is an alternative, particularly in the COVID-19 perspective or context, where you can't do public demonstrations because you might be harangued by the authorities for violating COVID-19 protocols. We need to start this creative disruption using different avenues. And as I said, I think, and also calling for greater accountability within the development financing institutions mechanisms. And this is something that has been going on at the global level for a very long time, to the extent even that these organizations are starting to listen, though the change is very slow.
Time for us to take a break. We're having a conversation with Jason Braganza and Julius Kapwepwe. This is with regards to governance gaps in the World Bank's engagement with Kenya, not just with Kenya, but with several countries in Africa. When the money is being lent to governments, how are citizens involved? How are citizens engaged before and during implementation of these projects? That's the conversation we're having at 27 minutes to 10 o'clock. Let's take this break. Take a look at the traffic and the weather. And remember, when we talk about all these conversations like now, World Bank and engagement with governments, there are things that we actually are able to point out. And this is where corruption seeps in.
Even African Development Bank.
All of
has
them.
a role to play.
Yes. All of them. And this is where the real pandemic with us is the corruption that seeps its way in very many ways. That is enabled by very many actors, either knowingly or unknowingly. And unless we point them out and we actually identify them and peg them and say, this is some form of corruption, then we'll only be left here fighting corruption at the point of after money has been stolen, looking for who to take to court. Let's take that break. We'll be back shortly. Good morning.
(24/7) around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Living isn't just breathing. Living is about taking it all in. Living is not just getting by. Living is taking the roads less traveled. Living isn't just eating. Living is about the art of whining and dining. Living isn't just doing the mundane. Living is about savoring the finer things in life. Because living is not a chore. Living is an art. In the new season of The Art of Living, we explore unearthed gems and discover what makes them home away from home. Join Nailante Kenga as she engages with exciting guests and tours the most exclusive destinations and homes every Sunday, 6 p.m. on KTN Home. Do your callers frequently ask you what stories made the news headlines? Introducing the Call Bulletin, courtesy of Skiza. You can now keep your callers informed and up to date with the latest news updates from KTN News, courtesy of Skiza. Dial star 811 star 795 hash to subscribe today. Set the tone with Skiza.
Cloudy conditions at 15 in Nairobi, highs of 24, lows of 12 today. Light rain in Nyeri, highs of 23. Mostly cloudy conditions at 17 in Nakuru. It'll go to highs of 26. 23 will be high in Eldoret, it's sunny at 17. 29 the high in Kisumu, it's sunny at 22. Mostly sunny conditions in Kakamega today, going into the weekend, highs of 28. We'll see highs of 29 and light rain in Mombasa, at least for now. 28 will be the high in Malindi, where it's also raining at 26. Mostly sunny conditions at 23. Looking out Kenya into Kampala, highs of 27. Dar es Salaam, mostly sunny at 25 with highs of 30 and lows of 21. 20 will be the high in Johannesburg, where it's sunny at 8. Rain showers at 25 in Lagos with highs of 30 today. 31 will be the high in Kinshasa. It's mostly sunny at 23. Sunny conditions at 29 in Beijing, highs of 29. Just that, and lows of 21. Sunny in Paris at 17, highs of 27. The summer months are striking hard. Mostly cloudy at 17 in London, highs of 24 and lows of 16. And a reprieve for New York. They'll see a high of just 24 today. Raining currently at 22, down to lows of 17.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM.
All right, taking steps out of traffic hour today doesn't look too bad at the moment. I think we got that situation on Thika Road sorted, and most people have at least gotten to where they are going today. So let's keep an eye on things as it opens up through the morning. Let us know on SpiceFM KE if you might be stuck. That accident that happened on Mombasa Road just after Kappa, that's been sorted, but we're dealing with some traffic still after that. Hopefully it will open up and ease up as we go into the morning. Don't forget, text 40127. Get yourself out of the jam, just in case.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
22 minutes to the top of the hour, to the end of this week's show. In the room with you this morning is Eric Latif, Nduoko, Wajiro Gekonyo, and our listener Yegon, who is in the house. And on the line is Jason Braganza and Julius Kapwapwe, discussing governance gaps in the World Bank engagement with Kenya. Yegon.
Jason, last week we had an email towards the African Bank when Kristalina, who is the IMF director, outlined the three policies of making Africa return back. And one of the things was end the pandemic everywhere. Number two was help Africa deal with the growing debt burden. Now, in this point, my question is, they are saying that the G20 debt service suspension initiative has provided much need breathing space for Africa to come up with a common framework for debt resolution fully operational. So my question is, who is responsible now to come up with a framework policy on how to reduce the debt in Africa? And how does the G20 debt suspension service affect the African member countries?
Thanks. That's a very good question, actually. First of all, we need to acknowledge that despite the several goodwill messages that have come from different quarters and the different initiatives that have been announced since the start of the pandemic and the onset of the debt crisis, which, by the way, like I mentioned the last time I was on the show, the debt crisis is something that we were already heading towards, and the pandemic just accelerated the situation that we're in. To the main point, the initiatives are not good enough. And as Afrodad and together with my friend Julius at UDN, we've been very clear in saying that the measures that have been put forward, such as the Debt Suspension Service Initiative, the G20's Common Framework, are not just good enough. Let me explain to you why. The Debt Suspension Service Initiative is exactly that. It's a suspension. It's not a cancellation. It's not a restructuring. It's a rescheduling. So it's been suspended and it will need to be paid once this period is over, which is towards the end of this year. So from next year, governments that qualified for this debt service suspension initiative or applied for it will have to resume paying these debts. With the G20 Common Framework, the biggest issue with it is that it does not include commercial private creditors to developing countries, specifically in Africa. And the reason this is important is because over the last 10 or 15 years, the debt accumulation by our governments has changed very dramatically, and there's a larger proportion of our debt that is now owned by private and commercial creditors. And the fact that they are not part of any of these initiatives is very problematic, because the risks we run is any debt restructuring or rescheduling or cancellation that we qualify for or we are able to negotiate will be rerouted to just offsetting the private creditors. And therefore, the real net effect or net benefit that we would be getting from the space that's created by this restructuring or cancellation may not actually be felt. Now, to specifically your question about who should be doing it, it's us the citizens, together with our government, needs to take a step back and sit down and come up with a comprehensive proposal that gives us a stronger voice in these negotiations. For many decades, just like on other issues like tax or trade, we have found ourselves on the weaker end of the negotiating table, and so we sign up to agreements that are really binding, both financially but also legally. And to try and readjust and come out of those frameworks and agreements becomes very costly and very challenging, and it further ties our hands in that way. So we need to start thinking about a new way of doing things that gives a lot more negotiating strength and negotiating capacity to our government. And this is why Afrodad, together with our friends at UDN, the Oka Uchumi Coalition, and continentally, we have been calling for greater participation and a greater voice of the public, of civil society organizations that have been working on these issues for several decades, to be on the table or at the table with the government to help it strategize, to help it develop stronger negotiating tactics that does not then lead to a situation where it loses its sovereignty. The African Union has also pronounced itself on this. They've come out very clearly saying that there needs to be another way of handling the current situation. So it's upon us to continue that fight, to continue voicing these concerns and voicing these ideas. Because what will end up happening is we'll be in the same cycle where we're signing up to these additional contracts through the IMF and the World Bank, which are loans in itself, as Wanjiru mentioned at the beginning of the show. And we'll continue just in this vicious cycle of constantly accumulating debt that needs to be repaid.
Julius, thanks so much, Jason, for that. I was hoping you'd mention the African Borrowing Charter, but maybe we'll come back to that. Julius, there's a word you said about the type of participation the World Bank does. I missed that. But my question is, what have you done as the Uganda Debt Network to open up the the space for civil society, for the public in World Bank and other multilateral funded debt projects?
Yes, thank you. I inherently I want to begin by saying on what have you done. What we've done is to alert our citizens, not just in Uganda, but across East African community, the 6 states, that many of these struggles are rooted in the core and cause for social justice. So what the Dedan Kimathi left us with, what the Kenyatta has left us with, the Tomboy has left us with, is Kambarage Nyerere and others, is what we are building on towards achieving, in principle. The second bit we've done is to knock at the doors of the powers that be. Alert Parliament that there is this proposal coming in about borrowing. We think it has this strength. We think it has these weaknesses. Please use your designated officers to address it. Unfortunately, as civil society actors, there is a limit to what we can exactly do. If an accountant general, say Nancy Gafungu, has been alerted that there has been an issue here around this debt-funded project, and her team doesn't do the conclusive elements as required under their designated officers, as civil society actors, there is a limit to what you can do. As you hear the word civil, we are not militants that if you don't, we shall come and shoot you off your chair. No, it is civil, the dialogue. So the dialogue is what we feel is legit, not only with the multilateral financial institutions, country offices, the African Development Bank, especially the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank that we are talking about at country level, but also at the regional level, whether in Tanzania, alerted the East African Legislative Assembly and the East African community structures about some of these concerns, but also about the good practices that are happening and encouraging those in offices that please proceed with this good practice, but also alerted those international financial institutions in Washington and elsewhere across the world. In Brussels, we've been there, the European Union, together with our friends under Aphrodite and many others, and have said this is our African position. The other bit on what we've done, then just building on what Jason has said, if you look at the current global regional, whether East African community or SADC, and also later on at a respective national level, the bigger 3 challenges we face now as a region are around health and the social issues, the social crisis. Health because of the COVID situation and the attendant social elements that come with that. If people are hungry and the government cannot quickly respond to their needs, and instead you are giving debt repayment or debt servicing the priority, it means you are potentially creating a hazard to political unrest across the respective countries. And we don't think that we should go that direction. The other bit then is the debt crisis that Jason highlighted. And amongst the many other positions we've taken incrementally is the call for total cancellation of all outstanding debts, beginning with the multilateral financial institutions, remembering also who are the owners. The owners are government of Kenya, the people of Kenya, the people of Uganda, the people of Tanzania, the membership, the 189 members across the world. So if we've borrowed and we've borrowed off our money literally, we think that this is the time we should be calling for total debt cancellation. Remember that those who want our gold and have always taken it, and it has ended up at Antwerp in Belgium, 10 times the cost. Those from Congo, from Uganda, from Kisumu areas to Beijing in China, those who have taken our coffee to make Nescafe and many others, those who have been taking our cobalt, our oil and gas, whether Total and many others, are the ones whose respective parent governments we are appealing to for total debt cancellation. We acknowledge there have been issues previously. Let us cancel 100%, give the Africans the breathing space. Then from there, we are able to build amicably on what would be kind of formidable.
Why would they?
And lastly, for me,
Sorry,
Precisely
Julius, what incentive? We can see it from the recipient point when you look at debt cancellation.
Yes.
But even if we are making this suggestion, and even at some point almost demanding such, how would it be beneficial to them to do it, and why would they acquiesce to such demands?
Our argument is that without Africa, the world cannot stand. Africa for a long time has been a gold mine for many of these global actors that contribute into the state coffers of their respective governments. So we are saying if you've taken our gold from bushia areas, whether on the side of Uganda or the side of Kenya, and across the African continent, whether it is the Democratic Republic of Congo and elsewhere, our oil and gas, you've actually inherently paid yourself back tenfold already. So can we have a bit of breathing space? Because they are not going to do without Africa. Can we then channel that money into 100% vaccination against COVID for all the citizens? When you look at the Kenyan figures on those that have taken the first COVID jab, 1.84 million people out of the 45 plus, you can see what I'm talking about. So there is a mutual benefit if we took that direction. Of course, then the other bit, if you are talking about climate and environmental destruction reversals, the Africans, the East Africans, those in Southern Africa need money to invest into the recovery of water catchment areas as we talk about addressing global warming, which global warming has mainly been caused by those countries in the global north, in the United States, in Europe, and in China. And those are the very people we are appealing to, so that we can demonstrate where we would be able to put those resources through writing letters and appealing, and also facing with them directly. If we can't meet them at the country offices, we will do so through the African Union, and we have done, but also we've flown to Washington and been able to have interface meetings alongside our governments and even independently as civil society actors.
Thanks so much, Julius. Jason, we've got maybe another 4 minutes, and then we'll need to wind up. I was hoping that you'd mention, the Africa, is it the AU Borrowing Charter or the African Borrowing Charter? A little bit about that and how you hope it will help, deal with the present problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as in rounding up with from the conversation we've had on the issue of responsible borrowing and responsible lending, AFRODAD has come up with what we call the African Borrowing Charter, which sets out a set of principles to strengthen and enhance public participation in how debt and loan contraction is done by governments in particular. It is also a document that lays out principles on the conditions that should be in place, as governments consider contracting loans and debt financing to finance their development agenda. This looks at the broader economic state of the country. It looks at the legal framework of the country that can safeguard government from very predatory lenders, as well as provisions for public participation, transparency, accountability, and governance. It's worth saying things like having a debt management office are one of those principles encompassed in the charter, as well as having a public debt register or a debt bulletin that stipulates the kind of creditors that a government has on its books and the amounts and where these finances are being used. So these are the kind of principles that we have been advocating for the past 25 years. We continue to push and ask members of parliament to look at this document and incorporate some of the principles within the domestic legislation to strengthen the voice of the public in loan contraction, but also strengthen the government's position in its negotiation tactics with its creditors.
Jason, thank you very much for all those insights. Jason Braganza is the Executive Director at the African Forum and Network on Debt and Development, AFRODAD. And also we've had on the line Julius Kapwepwe. He's the Director of Programs at the Uganda Development Network and also the Coordinator of the East Africa Budget Network. Gentlemen, asanteni sana for joining us this morning. Have a lovely day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay well.
Thank you.
Have a pleasure.
Asante sana. The conversation continues for the next 4 minutes as we conclude the show. I mean, the issue of that accountability and demanding accountability from the multilateral lenders, and even you, Yegon, you said, let's bring on board not just the IMF and the World Bank, but our own African Development Bank.
Mm-hmm.
Do they engage with the citizens? Is there a framework that's in place to engage with the citizens? So where do we go from here in terms of now demanding some movement from them?
Even as that's being said, I'm looking at the connectivity of African countries, because if it is a collective resolve, where are we with our regional bodies right now? Look at the AU, for example. Is the AU currently able to bring all countries together and say, these are issues with lending, foreign lending, these are issues with external lending, this should be a united front that we have? Is the AU, as it is right now, able to bring people to coalesce around a particular agenda and then have a common ground and a common approach on it? If we've not been able to come together and finish on issues of trade on the continent, opportunities and things like that, are we able to now take every country's external lending issues and then bring them together on a united front as African countries? Because it has to be that way. If we're going to have a voice that's going to speak to these external lenders on certain things, it must be united.
But who are the beneficiaries? The beneficiaries are the African member states.
Yes.
So if they have their own way of utilizing this money, I don't think there is any way they will come up.
They have no incentive.
They have no incentive to come together.
Because
so it has to be
it's
the
a
civil
collusion.
society.
It's a collusion between the international lenders.
And
their interest is to get paid. They have surplus liquidity. They need to push it into a market, get high interest returns. And as long as the conditions are stringent enough that no matter what, the money will be repaid, they turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
Here, it's the local elites who benefit.
Yeah.
So yesterday, the day before, we talked about the grass. The grass is the one that suffers. And the grassroots has to wake up.
Yep.
Otherwise, this scenario will go from bad to worse.
So then that is now the role of the civil society.
That's what we're trying to do.
To even get the people, the citizens on board, getting the citizen on board this journey so that we can all push.
What we're trying to do with this is, one, we've written to the World Bank because they say capacity building, sensitization. So we want to tell them, can you do that? And put pressure there. But of course, we want to take this to Parliament as well, so that we can sensitize Parliament to wake up. And of course, we have to do the citizen outreach to build that pressure. So, as Jason was talking about these standards of borrowing, Kenya has the principles, has the institutions in place.
Yep.
But we have a capture of those institutions. So we talked about elections yesterday, and same issue. Our democratization process has been captured by a few. We need to push forward with the revolution. And I think Julius put it very well. And what maybe we've been missing in our approach, because he said this is the quest for social justice.
Yeah.
And unfortunately in Kenya, maybe we, as civil society, we haven't embraced these principles of social justice and try and inbuild them with the citizens so that we understand properly what the new challenge is.
What the challenge is.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been an interesting week having you with us, Wajiro, and having you today as well, Yegon.
Thank you very much.
How's your experience been in the room? Ambia jamaa na marafiki for the next one that we're going to invite.
Very tense and hot.
We promised you a cold seat and it was hot. We apologize. You provoked us, Diego. But you are very, very good. You did very well.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Right. And to all our listeners, yes, we'll be reaching out to you occasionally. We want to have more and more engagement, direct engagement with our listeners, as we do the same with the duty bearers. It has to be both ways. Wanjiro as well, asante sana for this week and for all the conversations that we've had this week. Nduoko, thank you for joining us midway through the week.
Oh, really? the alternate. My goodness, my other personality. This is blasphemy. I know how to find you.
Thank you for showing up.
What is this agenda?
I don't know.
Why is Eric trying to write off your Monday, Tuesday?
I don't know what he's doing, but I'll find him.
Okay. See? She clearly also knows where she was. Thank you for tuning into the Situation Room this week. Today's proverb, atakaye kufuga ng'ombe aanze na kuku, It's one who wants to rear cattle should start with chicken. Do not despise small beginnings. Start somewhere small. If you want to go, that journey of 1,000 steps, begin with
a single one.
The single one. Asante sana for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again next week, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Now until 11, music, and then the Sugar and Spice will be here, and then Monique will be here taking you home on Spice Drive. 7 to 10 p.m., the adults in the room. Tomorrow is Saturday. We have Olivia Otieno here with the 00 Direct. More music. Have a lovely weekend, folks. It's now 10 a.m.